Hello, hello. I have a really fun night planned tonight. Like some really cool stuff. In the meantime, while we're kind of waiting for the stream to pop up, somebody popped in the room and said, hey, can I ask a question? So I'll tell you what, let's have some fun. And I'm going to pull a random card and give you a message real quick. And in the meantime, type your question. Missy, how's it going? Thank you for that video. That was awesome. It was cool to like go back and go over all the stuff. It all came to me at once too, like this whole memory of Dr. Emoto and the crystals with the water and the experiment with the rice, and really fascinating stuff. And and the whole idea of vibration and resonance. Those are two sides of the same coin, aren't they? And so when you brought that up, it just kind of all clicked, and so that's what that email was about. Sorry, it was kind of long. So. Totally. Listen, I hope you feel better. I appreciate you popping in to say hey. And just check the video, when you get up, or when you're, if you're bored later in bed and you're like, meh, I keep all the streams up, so check it out. But thank you for popping in. Yeah, that's fun. That's a great subject. And actually, because of you, I'm kind of motivated to do that. So I'm going to talk about it probably in the next several days. That's a great subject, and I hope you feel better. Incidentally, I wanted to ask you about your name. I'm also I'm assuming that you're of Italian descent, and I'm also of Italian descent. And I was curious because of the name Francasio is basically it's a combination of two words that means like Francesco is like a free man, like a and then you have Asio is a word for basically it's the Italian word for the Asian people, right? So like it basically what it means is free Asian people. And if you consider the Italian peninsula, depending upon where the country came or your family came from, I have two sides, right? The one side came from Abruzzo on the east coast, and then my other side, the Damones, are Napolitan. So the Paganos are east coast, and Napolitan is the Damones. But and as far as that's concerned, though, I don't know, your family might have kind of came from another place across the water and landed in Italy long time ago. You never know. You should look into it. That's kind of cool that you have a unique name. So let's pull a quick card for Subhadra. Or was it Subhadra? Sorry, Subhadra. Six of Cup. What a beautiful card. That's a great card to get as a random card. The Six of Cup. Let's show you that. Isn't that just lovely? The Six of Cup is kind of the idea, like, and you can see here too. There's sort of this union of these. If you can kind of see the middle there, right? And sort of, it's kind of the idea of having this union between what you really want and what your body wants, like what you want and what your body wants. And when you stick something in between, you can see the distinct difference in the artwork on the bottom and the top, as if they're two different worlds, right? And what this signifies is this sort of combination of them all taking in from the same place, and so it refers to pleasure. Right? And so what this idea is, kind of on the surface, is the idea of making sure that you know what it is you actually want, and then if that's in a line with your body, then you're going to probably have a good experience, and if not, then it can maybe go bad for you. Incidentally too, if there's any subjects that anybody out there feels like would be something they'd want to talk about, Missy and I were talking about an email she had sent me related to a subject with vibration and how you can sort of see patterns. If there were some experiments done with plates and sand, and it's a really interesting subject where if you vibrate the plate at a specific frequency, it makes a pattern in the sand. And the reason it's able to do that is that sand is unique in that it acts as a fluid and a solid at the same time. So each individual particle acts alone, but the whole thing is like one solid liquid. So it's able to hold a shape during these vibrations by adding these like peaks and so forth, depending upon the frequency. And as you turn the speaker up or down in frequency, the shapes change. And now there's some interesting things there. Like if you use a A440, and then you go back down in octaves, which is like 220, 110, so forth, and you go down in octaves, it has the same symmetry, meaning that like an A may have a symmetry of like 4. And even though the pattern gets more complex as you increase the frequency, it still maintains the pattern of the 4. So there's this idea of the raw element of that frequency is 4, but the complexity increases as the frequency raises, right? And so isn't that what we're talking about all the time? And then every 2 has the 3rd, right? And so the idea, though, in this particular circumstance is the fact that those patterns, however beautiful they are very profound. And what they're pointing to is kind of an important fact about physical reality and how things form. What really does make... Forget about the electromagnetic, the strong and weak, and gravity, and just consider like what actually motivated them to meet to begin with, let alone what are the forces that keep them together once they meet. And that is resonance. It's the idea too, for instance, if I hold a tuning fork that's a 4 or like an F, and I pluck the F string on a guitar, that tuning fork will start to vibrate. But if I pluck the E string, it won't, right? Because it's in love with F, and when it sees F, it reacts, and it's not friends with E. And then you have the idea of harmonies, like the fifths, the thirds, and all these other beautiful harmonies. And what are fifths and thirds? So they're math, right? You take a 440, you divide it in a certain way, across the Fibonacci scale, and you get a piano. It's kind of a beautiful thing. Well, it's the same idea as far as how, from the base level up, pre-string, things decide to connect. And, when you look at that plate, and these beautiful shapes that come about on this plate of sand when you vibrate it, consider the fact that the reason that we're seeing it as a flat surface is that it's on a plate and it's being acted upon by gravity. If those weren't the case, theoretically, if you were to take it, not theoretically, but if you were able to take a ball of sand into a zero gravity situation and vibrate it, it would create the real shape, which each circle would be a sphere, each square would be a cube, each triangle would be a tetrahedron, and it would create a flowing, moving, harmonic, resonating physical object in three-dimensional space instead of it vibrating on a plate. And we see that all the time. In fact, if you look up right now, you'll see Jupiter big and bright and beautiful in the sky, and some other planets. The idea of the vortex, this space in between where these two frequencies meet and things happen, can be viewed even in Saturn, and I'll leave it here and then move on. Look up the word Saturn Hexagram, and you'll see that on the poles of Saturn there are actual literal angled hexagrams that appear on this planet because of we believe that there's some type of magnetic vortex that's being created, but that has a certain kind of resonance, but there's an idea of the competing forces that wind up giving it specific angles, and it winds up in a hexagram. So check that out, because that's a very literal physical example of what we're talking about, and it's right there. NASA pictures, they're beautiful. There's even video of it, which is gorgeous. To watch this counter-rotating, I don't know if we've ever seen any counter-rotating forces on this channel before that maybe have some significance to what we're talking about. But when you consider the fact, and we're going to see more tonight, I'm talking about the I Ching tonight, and good stuff. So, it was right in line with what I was going to begin speaking about with the Vortex, the I Ching, and these other things, so I appreciate it, Missy. Yanis, how's it going? Thank you for popping in. Good to see you. So, on that note, I hope that was insightful, Savadra. And, it really just comes down to making sure that what you think your heart wants and what you think your body wants aren't usually the same. And sometimes it's better to think with the heart and feel with the mind, okay? So that's your advice, and I appreciate you popping in. Lauren, how's it going? Thanks for popping in. That said, the things we're going to be speaking about tonight are kind of a little bit on the lighter side, and then some of them are kind of heavy, depending upon your how you feel about subjects like the Bible or things along those lines. First of all, To all the members of the tribe out there, Happy New Year. It's going to be a good one. All right, blow that horn. And one of the things that we're going to be... Oh, I'm so happy to hear you say that. You just made me smile. One of the things we're going to be talking about tonight is the blowing of the horn, right? There's a very special ritual that takes place during the New Year for the Jewish people. It's so holy that I waited to speak about it, even though I'm not Jewish. I have a very deep respect for them, and I was actually raised... one of the people that raised me was a Jewish man, and I have a very deep love for him, so I do have kind of a connection to the religion. But that said, though, I'm not Jewish, and so I'm not going to profess. It's not my first language. It's not, but I did grow up in Brooklyn. So does that make me one by injection? All kidding aside, though, there's a lot of stories in all the different kinds of faiths with respect to well, let's put it this way: the serpent, right? And now, what is the serpent? It comes up in some of the most important stories, and it has a couple of different forms when it appears, right? The first time we see the serpent is obviously in the Garden of Eden. I mean, as early as you can go, practically, right? Yes, there is, and we're going to talk about one of them tonight. And I'm curious, too, after I talk about that, to your perspective, if you want to add to the conversation. Anyone on the chat, please feel free to add to the conversation. Then we're going to be speaking about the flame, right? So the serpent and the flame, and that title is very specific, is dramatic on purpose. Everybody who knows my channel here knows that I really feel like... having an emotional attachment to the information helps it sink in better, and then you can later on look back on it and go, wow, now I understand what he meant, because you're taking the emotional reaction that you had to the information the first time and are now looking at it mentally. So you're mentally examining an emotional state. You're not just looking at information, and that is a very effective way to learn. That is a very old way to kind of get information in when you have to study quickly, is if you have an emotional attachment to the information, your brain just drinks it. And then later on, you can process that mentally. It's kind of like your favorite song that you sit down with a friend and go over the lyrics, and it's like easy for you because you know the lyrics well. Well, when's the last time you learned the lyrics to a song you hated? All right, so... and now the order in the vortex, we're going to talk about the I Ching, and there's some fun stuff. Now, not just I Ching, but I Ching related to tarot, I Ching related to the inner sanctum, I Ching related to the vortex. And ultimately, what I keep speaking about, and it was the thing that motivated me to finally build the deck, is the idea that order matters, and there is a divine method of reading the tarot that requires a knowledge of this divine order. And applying the vortex to that spread unlocks a very, very deep level of knowledge related to not only the story of your creation, but the story of the creation of the universe, sort of as an ebb and a flow, as two stories happening at the same time. And so that's the idea. And so what we're going to look at tonight is looking at the I Ching and how it correlates to everything we've been talking about. I made a very bold statement that this deck that I created is the key to and can unlock all human knowledge. I don't care what book you're talking about, the Bible, the I Ching, Isis Unveiled, Morals and Dogma, the Book of Thoth, you name it. Definitely the Emerald Tablet, alchemy, physics, mathematics, music, all these things. So, I'm going to look at some of the correlations that I've talked about in the I Ching tonight, as well as some of the ways that you can use the element system. The elements are a big part of reading tarot, right? And so, suffice it to say, if you were to have another system that was also an elemental system, you can kind of compare these two and see how they work together. And so I'm going to take you through a very quick, we're not going to get too deep, but a very quick primer on how to read the court cards as elements and how that ties into the I Ching, okay? And so the Tao of Pooh is my favorite story. That actually woke me up. The Tao of Pooh, the person who wrote it, I'm not sure if they started out as a lighthearted idea, but they personified the concept of the Tao as Pooh, as Winnie the Pooh. And then he goes through the other different forms in the other characters, as far as Piglet and as far as Tigger and so forth. And it's really a beautiful story. The Tao of Pooh is a great story. The serpent was worshipped long before Christian faith. The serpent was worshipped probably first. One of the first artifacts ever found that looked like a religious figure was a stone statue found in the Iraq area of a human figure with a serpent head. And why is that? I have the answer. Miss King, how are you? I have the answer for that. And I actually revealed it theoretically about 2 or 3 streams ago when I put up the statue of in the Vatican of Mithras slaying the bull, the dog licking the wound, the snake coming up, the serpent, and then the scorpion stinging the testicles of the bull. All right. And so if you consider what that statue means, my opinion is that it represents the end of the age of Taurus. Mithras being the god of time, slaying the bull is the end of the age of Taurus, and that was giving rise to the new age, which would, I believe, at that point was Scorpio. But I'm not sure. I haven't. Don't quote me on that. But I do believe the statue is related to the end of the age of Taurus. Now, what we're referring to here is a different circumstance, right? And so, but when you consider the what ages are the precession. The precession of the equinoxes, which is a very fancy way of saying when the sun rises, there's a constellation behind it. And if you look at the constellations, they actually rotate over a period of time. And so during each equinox, we don't see it in a lifetime. It takes 72 years. Actually, it's interesting that this came up because I have this on my calculator. 25,920 years is the total length of that cycle. Divided by 360 degrees of a circle is 72 degrees, or 72 years per 1 degree tilt of the precession. Anyway, that's not really what we're here to talk about today, but what that means is that there's different ages. And so what that is, the original serpent worship was the age of Ophiuchus, which is in between Scorpio and Sagittarius. And so if you see Scorpio, then the snake in that statue, you have the scorpion at the end of Taurus, you have the snake coming up, and that's Ophiuchus. And who is Sagittarius? In this case, I believe that Mithras is not Sagittarius. I believe that Mithras is Orion. And the reason I believe that is that if you'll notice, there's a dog licking the wound, and that dog is Canis Major, which is the star Sirius, which is right next to Orion in the sky. That's my theory. I have no reason to disbelieve that. I think it's pretty solid proof. You know, I mean, just read the story in front of you in that statue, and that's what you're looking at, right? And so when you see people who worship the serpent, what those people were, and there's also another serpent in the southern hemisphere as well, and I'll let you look at that on your own. And that's the serpent at the end of the Bible, where they talk about this, seven-headed thing, whatever the case may be. And there's other serpents. And the ones we're going to talk about today are related to this whole story that I've been unfolding of the creation of your universe at the same time, right? And so on that note, I wanted to begin with going over a couple of correlations that I think we miss when studying the Bible. And it's kind of hard to bump into these unless you've looked at other religions or bodies of knowledge and then willfully compared it, right? So, and if you haven't gone through that, you kind of can maybe take it for granted. Like what I read, okay, Adam and Eve, and they were in the garden and God said don't, and they did, and bad things, right? No. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the shofar, right, which we had mentioned before with respect to the horn. It's a ram's horn. All right, so, and we happen to be literally absolutely opposite of Aries right now. Okay, anyways, so, and then we're going to talk about the Wiccan Great Right, which is what? What is the Great Right? The sword in the cup. Aha. Okay, and now we're going to speak about some other things in the Bible too, about Eden, Moses, and his staff that turned into a snake and then created fire to stop the Egyptians, right? And so let's take a look. Yeah, I do natal charts too. If you want one and that's read correctly too, I do natal charts, and we can go over that. So first, let's not move my camera. Okay. The first thing I wanted to talk about is a couple of stories in the Bible. The first one that we see all the time is Adam and Eve, right? And they're in Eden. And now, who tempted Eve? The serpent did. Now, what is the serpent? The serpent is the will of God, but from below. So if we look at the dichotomy between the upper world of our higher self and the lower world of our lower self, and our higher self, when it fell, everything kind of got twisted in the air on the way down, and it shows up opposite. In fact, so opposite, when God speaks to us from above, we hear the opposite from below. If I call up saying, God, are you here? I hear from below, there is no God. And that's the voice of God saying, I'm here. Do you understand? So, who is the serpent? The serpent is the wand of God, but it appears evil because it fell through the veil. And so, the wand of God and the serpent are the same thing. And what is the wand? The wand is the will, right? The will of God. And so, now, or our higher self, the will of our higher self. Those two things are synonymous. Call me blasphemous. I'm a deacon in a Christian church. I'm allowed to say that. But that said, though, let's take a look at the deck I put together, and let's just look at what I just said. Right? So what we have, and what we're going to be looking at right now, is the estrangement, right? The descent, the fall. And this is the beginning. This is where we the normal divine order of the tarot, which represents the will, the heart, the mind, and the body. And then here you have the higher world, and you have the divine will, the divine mind, the divine heart, and the divine body. And the vortex I've explained before, so go back a few if you want to see what that's all about. But basically, and that's why these are opposite. But what you'll notice is that the will of God rains down onto the will of human beings, onto the lower, and so they are shared. We just don't know it, because if we're not listening with the right thing, if we're listening to the mind with the mind, we're going to miss that. If we're listening with the heart to the heart, we're going to miss that. You have to put the sword in the cup, and then you will receive the divine will of God, and then nothing can stop you, right? And so this is the idea that we're talking about. Now, instead what happened is the snake from above was the one who offered up. But that doesn't work. There's nothing going to happen here. This is actually empty, right? And so, but the question here is, again, just to kind of reiterate, like, who was the one who tempted whom? God. Who was the one who ate the apple? God. I've always said, and I revealed here recently, the actual algorithm, which is every two has a third. God began his descent, and the serpent was born. That's two. He needs a third, Adam. The serpent wasn't really around yet, right? He just kind of walked into the scene, but he existed because the moment that creation happened, the descent had begun. Not completely, but it had begun. Adam and Eve weren't physically manifest yet. So then now the serpent that we're talking about is the will of God emerging from below and telling Eve, don't eat that tree. What does that mean? That's the voice of God from above saying, eat from that. Right? So it turns out Eve did her job. Not only her job, she did exactly what she was supposed to do. Because Eve was divine and heard the real voice. And so Eve approached this tree. The serpent said, eat from the tree. And she heard the voice of God from above. She never saw a serpent. Okay, how does that feel with everybody, right? And now, the idea here is that the eating of the fruit was a willful act by God himself through Eve, because she was him. Adam and Eve were just God split into gender, into polarity. Polarity is a better word. And then through the act of conversation with the serpent, the descent continues, right? Are you Aries rising? Then you're gonna love what I talk about tonight. Oh, a couple Aries in the house. Wow, that's cool. I'm gonna be getting to readings in a little bit, Dieselhawk. So if you want to stick around, then when we get to readings, I'll be happy to do that. So you get the idea here. The serpent is this. What it is the will of God coming from below, which is the opposite voice of God coming from above. And anytime you hear the serpent talking to you, recognize that that's God speaking, and that the words that you're hearing are simply opposite of what you're supposed to hear, what God intended you to hear. Now, what is God? Your higher self. We're talking about you. And I don't mean that figuratively. You ate the apple. Actually, it was a pomegranate. You ate the pomegranate. You did. And you are the one who walked up and said, what are you doing? And then you looked at yourself and said, here, eat this. Because you over there said, I should eat it. And so this is an interesting place where we talk about the fall from grace. And then what happened? Every two has a three. Adam and Eve fell into the world. We're told you can't come in. We're blocking you with these flaming angels, the abyss. And you can't come back into heaven. And then they had a child. The third in Cain, right? Do I believe Adam, Eve, and the serpent? Yeah, so what I'm saying is that that is the truth in secret. Okay, and the Adam and Eve story is the truth and secret, because again, I'm pointing to the same thing that we've talked about in other different religions, other different philosophies are all pointing to that same truth. So no, Adam and Eve were not in a garden, did not eat from a tree, there was no serpent, and so this is an allegory. This is not an account. It's poetic language designed to elicit a response. Elicit a realization. Some things can't be taught. They can only be learned. They have to come to you on your own. And so these stories are designed, like the Bible or the Torah, or even especially Crowley, who was very specific in how he wrote it to elicit a response. And these individuals like that. And so, no. What I'm saying, Yenis, is that you are God. Right. You. And if you're not clear on what I mean by that, 2 or 3 streams ago I put it in a playlist because it stopped. It's called This Will Wake You Up, period. Watch that video and then you're going to know exactly what I mean. The idea here is that when things fall through the abyss, from heaven to earth, from your higher self to your lower self, as divine physically manifested into reality, it fell through the abyss, and when it did, everything got flipped and then turned around. And so when you hear the voice from above, it's going to sound like the opposite voice from below. When you see a color above, it is black and white below. When you see a man down here, there's a woman up there. The fact of the matter is that the wand of God is a vagina. Don't forget, it fell, got twisted, and landed as a penis. It wasn't originally. And just sit on this truth for a minute. What gives birth? Not men. Men don't bring things into physical reality. What is the element that brings the element into physical reality? What is the court card that offers the element to the world? The princess, not the prince, not the king. And the queen passes the story on by birthing the new prince, which impregnates the princess to give birth to her element to the world. So the fact is that woman created the universe. How do I know? Because we've been taught that it's a man. Why? Because they heard that divinely. Somebody heard divinely that God was, whatever, created this and that and all the other, and they have this masculine energy about the whole thing. Our Father. God's a woman. How do I know? Because God manifested physically in the world as Jesus, which is a man, which means he's a woman up there. But that said, another place that we see this idea of the wand and the Serpent. So the Jews are getting some like serious crap from the Egyptians, all right? And it's time for it to stop. And so they get together and they're like, yeah, we're going to do something about it. Yeah, let's go. Okay, who's going? So Moses is like, all right, I guess I'll go. I kind of have a relationship with the Pharaoh. You know, we used to be brothers and whatever, so I'll go talk to him. And then, you know, but I don't want to go alone. So his, I think his brother or cousin Aaron came with him. I forget if it's his cousin or brother, pardon me, right? But then they go down to the Pharaoh and they're like, yo, stop. And he's, I am Pharaoh. Yeah, whatever, Pharaoh. So listen, please do me a favor and stop, or I'm going to have to, like, smite you with my God. Smite me with your God. Oh, this is going to be great. Okay, smite me. And so he tosses his wand on the ground, and it turns into a serpent. And so now the Pharaoh's like, yo, that was pretty, like, really cool. I have a couple of mages over here, and they're, like, really good at what they do. Can you do that? And they did. They threw their wands on the ground, and they turned into serpents. And then what happened? If anyone who's familiar with this story will know. The wand that Moses threw down ate the other serpents. Divine will consuming and destroying profane will. And so, interesting story, right? And Aaron has actually used the wand too. It happened as well with Aaron, where it was actually Aaron's staff that Moses borrowed. But that's a different story. But you get the gist, right? I mean, the wand and the serpent are the same thing and a story. And what the serpent represents is your will in motion, your will being realized. The profane will. It wants to travel up. That's why we see the Caduceus. We see it going up. These two serpents. Two. Every two has a third. Look at the Two of Cups in the tarot, and you'll see what I mean. I have my kit getting ready for my the deck here, and I have it all put together in this box, and this is in there. Okay, so let me show you the Two of Cups, and you'll see what I mean there. And obviously the Lover's card, which is a scene of the of that scene in Eden with the serpent. Let's find the Two of Cups first. Okay, and so what we're going to talk about here is if this doesn't show you, then we'll move on to the other subjects, and you can ponder this, but this is really it's obvious once you see it, okay? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. What are you looking at? A bunch of clouds. I see a dog. Bam, there's a dog. You can't unsee the dog. Next time you look at that cloud, yep, still a dog. Let's start here. On the left is Eve, with the serpent going up the tree. On the right is Adam. And look, you have the flaming bush, which is the tree of life that he said we should eat from. And then we have the tree of knowledge here that Eve is next to, right? And then we have this separate third being up here, right? Which is not a God, but it's the angel that spoke. Right? And now, let's look at the Two of Cups. This is the same exact scene in the lower world. Same exact scene. Like, consider the fact that what this is the lower world version of that. And this is the rise of the serpents back up because the cups are in unison. Do you understand? So this is the higher and lower version of the same card. And now this is the card of 6. Which is the unification, right? The unification of the two surfaces. So, for instance, We have the one surface, which is God, that started as the 3. Right, the 1, 2, 3. The cup pointed down, and then the other 3, which is that unification. Right? It gives us the holy symbol, right? This holy symbol that we all know, and this is the 2D version of something that I've showed here very often, right? Which is the basically the idea of the counter-rotating forces of the descent of your higher self and the ascent of your lower self, which is also represented by the vortex. Okay, so you see the idea here of this particular circumstance with the serpent, and then the serpent, 2 serpents rising, both wands in unison, right? So you get the gist. And so now there's another place, there's several in here, but there's another place in the Bible that talks about the serpent, and not as a serpent, but as the wand, and the wand of fire. Now, why do I bring up wand of fire? Well, anyone in here do the Wiccan thing in their teen years? Or right now? Because if you're familiar with the Wiccan philosophies, which, by the way, are so beautiful and are a great example, they really more use the idea of the theory of levels and polarity and the eightfold way and these things, and then there's the great work. But the idea here is that they also have an elemental system, and they call the wand air and the sword fire. And the reason that they do that, there's various reasons, but I was never really, I don't know. I understand that maybe, okay, so air and the plant, I don't know, or fire to forge metal, or, you know, but you burn wood, but, you know, and so I've had that conversation in my head for you know, a couple decades. But it really comes down to the fact that, you know, we can't deny the phallic nature of the wand. And if you consider the act of sacred, not profane, sexuality, you're talking about, you know, a sword, a wand. You know, it's a different circumstance. That's all I'm saying. But, however, in the Wiccan religion, the basis, the holiest of their, other than drawing down the goddess, is the idea of this great work. And that great work is the athame into the cup. So there must be something there, and it turns out that there is, and you guys have all seen it if you've been on the channel here. Due to the divine vortex, the 2 suits on the top and the upper world flip from the normal order, putting the sword into the cup, the divine mind into the profane heart, the divine heart into the profane mind. It is the union of both. Do you see that going on there? Why is that? Because of the vortex. The bodies are in unison, so it's a beautiful act. There's no disharmony, and the will just pours down. Remember, this is not. Notice the dot, the line, right? Does that look like a wand? Maybe not, but if you consider it as a vagina, it certainly does, instead of the phallic of the lower world, right? And this act in the Wiccan religion is depicted perfectly in this system by the fact that if you apply the vortex, you see that occur, right? And so this makes sense. They knew. At least Gerald Gardner, okay? And who was Gerald Gardner? Gerald Gardner is the person who mainstreamed Wicca back in the day there. Wasn't that long ago. And look this up. He was a member of the Golden Dawn, knew this science, and brought it into the Wiccan Reformation, right? And so that idea here is obviously depicted in their ritual. And why does it appear here? Because it's correct. And since it's correct, it can be utilized to unlock any system, including the most holy of the Wiccan rituals. And so that same idea, as far as the elemental system is concerned, we have to now consider the wand of fire and why I'm so adamant that it's fire. The idea here is for instance, and it's right here, and this is another very holy thing to the magical system of Solomon, to the system of the tarot based on the holy name, anything that is derived from the Kabbalistic or Hermetic arts that reference Kabbalah are going to have this idea of the holographic nature of the alphabet, right? And so where did they get that name from? Where did the name of God come from? Well, it turns out it came from the Bible. Now, not the one we read today. It came from the original Pentateuch, the old first 5 books, in the book of Exodus, chapter 14, verses 19, 20, and 21. They each, incidentally, have 72 letters. And what you do is you take the top line, which is verse 19, and line it up the correct way in Hebrew, which is from right to left, and then you take the next line and you flip it, and you do it from left to right, and then you take the third line and flip and do it normally from right to left, and then you read down the 3 letters that line up, and each 3 letters is one of the names. It's unspeakable. It's so holy you can't speak it. You can't speak it because it's not a name. It's not a word. It's not meant to be spoken. But we'll get there at some point. However, let's do that. Let's just, for the sake of it, for the fun, let's just have some fun. Let's read that verse. Why not? What's this verse that the ancient Hebrews thought, they found the holy name of God in? Exodus 14, 19, 20, and 21. You think the number 21 is an accident? You think the fact that 14 equals 5 is an accident? Okay, so anyway, 14, Exodus 14, Exodus, Exodos, 2 tens. And the angel of God, who went before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them, and a pillar of fire went before them and stood behind them. And so it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. Thus it was a cloud and darkness to the one, and it gave light to the other, so that the one did not come near the other at all. What is that fire? The abyss. Anyway, and here's verse 21. Now, remember, it just says here Moses stretched out his hand, so it doesn't refer to the wand. So let me go back a minute here. When God is talking to Moses, he says, lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea. So he's basically saying, take your wand, take your hand, and part the seas. Take your rod. And what does he do? He gets scared and he bangs the rod on the ground, and a pillar of fire explodes between him and the Egyptians, protecting the Jews for long enough to gather their shit, and then run to Galilee, and they're like, this is a big lake. This is the Sea of Galilee. We can't cross the Sea of Galilee. And he goes, psh, God. Bang. Puts his wand down and then parts the seas. Now, what does the fire wand do to water? It repels it. The fire wand repels the water. Okay? Are we good? And so now he used the fire wand to create a pillar of fire to protect each other, or more importantly, to prevent them from connecting, i.e. the abyss. And then they ran all the way to complete the descent, which incidentally, by the way, took them 40 years to get like 5 miles, God bless, because they just were going in circles. They didn't know where they were going. It took them 40 years to finally get there. Had they only had a person to show them the way, it would have been a 5-minute walk, right? How long does it take you to walk 5 miles when you mean it? I could probably do that in, like, really, who even knows? I could probably do a mile in a couple minutes if I really was like huffing. And I'm like really out of shape, so. But you see what's happening here. So the holy name of God in the Bible at chapter 14, Exodus 14, 19, 20, and 21 refers to the Moses using his wand of fire to create the abyss. Come on. All right. And now it also talks about a swirling cloud, like a vortex. And then there's obviously the serpent at the end, right? Which is not referenced as a serpent. It's called a dragon. But you get the idea. Okay. Now let me just check my notes. I started taking notes before doing the streams, which is good. Most of my streams were sort of stream of consciousness. But I recently started taking notes just to make sure I didn't miss anything that I wanted to speak about. And if not, then I'm going to move to the horn of the new year. Because it's not an accident that it's a ram horn. so I talked about the Great Rite. Yep. All right, good. So the last thing is the shofar. Or say, so during the New Year, what they do, well, one of the things that's done, it's a very holy time. 3 days after the equinox, which is maybe an accident, is this new year, right? It does change. It's not based on a traditional calendar. But what I want to show you here is why they're blowing a ram horn. Okay, they're blowing a ram horn because here's where we are right now, right? The period of time that we're in and the date right now is somewhere roughly around here, right? Aries. They're pointing at Aries. They are blowing a call to the actual beginning of the year, or kind of like calling that opposite. They are basically they're answering it. They're answering it. It spoke, they heard, they answered. It spoke, they heard, they answered, right? And so there's a beautiful symmetry there with respect to why a ram horn during this time when it's literally opposite of Aries is not an accident. And I challenge anyone to go through the fun exercise of looking at holidays, looking at the dates, and then pop up a wheel. It doesn't have to be the Deacon Wheel. It could be any wheel that has to do with the year that's appropriate, that's correct. And you're going to find some really interesting correlations. Last thing I bumped into years ago, which is a great conversation opener with respect to this kind of thing, is the fact that I was born in December, right? And I talk about the deacons all the time. Why are the deacons called the deacons? Or the decannate? Right? Why are the small cards of the tarot called the decannate? Because they reference a 10-degree period of time. This is 10 degrees in the sky, right? And so if you divide the sky up into 10-degree periods, there's going to be 36 of them. 36 deacons. Why? Because deca means 10. Right? Deca means 10. Decimal, decimate, deca, 10. Right? And so, okay, deca means 10. So, all right. So, and this was just a thing that popped in my head once. I'm like, does that mean December means 10? Like December? And then I thought, all right, what about November? 9. October, 8. September, 7. So I was like, all right, wait a minute. Then why is December the 12th month? Maybe somebody wanted to change that for a reason. So, and just think about that for a minute. And there, you can look back and see why the months changed. Because you'll see that it doesn't carry all the way through. Like, Sept, yes. Aug, no. So August was named after a person, right? Augustus, probably. But then after that, you have Sept, meaning the 7th month, but it's not the 7th month anymore. July is. So isn't that strange? Shouldn't July be September? So that said, that was the Serpent and the Flame. I'm just going to pause real quick, see if anybody has any questions, and I'm going to kind of peruse the chat real quick before we continue. Oh, well, okay, well, actually, what do we have here? The Harry Potter parcel tongue, huh? Like he knew it, but it was known that... Yeah, wow, how do you like... That's actually a beautiful little analogy. Let me sit on that for a minute. Well, not only that, he was part of Voldemort, right? Like, Voldemort was actually in him. They were kind of partly the same, although he wasn't born that way. He became that way through, through the act. But so that said, though, the idea of him speaking parcel tongue, although I will say this, though, yeah, even Harry was not okay with it, right? Like, he did it, but there was always this idea that he felt weird about it, which it makes sense now, though, as far as within the context of that universe, is the fact that, he didn't speak parcel tongue. He spoke it because of Voldemort, right? Because of the element that was bestowed upon him. There's a lot of beautiful correlations when it comes to the patterns within wheels compared to then taking that wheel and making it into a spreadsheet, or taking a spreadsheet and turning it into a wheel. Because when you're looking at a spreadsheet, you're not going to see that it pointed at Aries. You're just looking at a list of dates. But you put it on a wheel and you see it's a cross, right? I mean, and so you have to look at things from 3 perspectives. Because, you know, that's also a sphere. And that changes everything. And so, you know, looking at that idea makes a big difference. Like, you know, look at the world through multiple dimensions. What does it look like in 2D? Well, it looks like a wheel with, you know, a grid. Okay, well, let's change it and put it into 3D, but project it in 2D. So we bend it into a circle. Okay, now let's let it live in 3D, right? And then if you see that as a sphere, everything moves around and it becomes a spiral inside. So when you're looking at this wheel, from the top, it looks like a circle, but it's not. It's a sphere with a spiral in it. 2 spirals. It's a sphere with 2 spirals. Counter-rotating up and down of the deacons, the march of the courts in one direction. I wonder which one it is. And then the rise of the proletariat, right? Which is us going back. Oh, I see. Okay, sure, cool. And you also, there's a lot of numbering systems that are pretty great, but I just wanted to throw that little tidbit out about the months, and it's a good conversation opener about why that might be the case, right? Like, why would they do that? Why would they decide to add months to the point where, or they were the people who made that change, because it was probably by the decree of some king. That threw the naming of the math off. You know, go figure. I mean, well, consider that the god Mithras is actually, in Greek numerology, means 360. And that's the god of time. And interestingly, later on, you know, through the unification of religions and things getting merged because of stuff going on, the god Mithras, and there's still a Mithriatic cult that exists today, but the name of the god changed to Abraxas, and Abraxas it equals 365. Let's take a look. Just checking something real quick, pardon me. Okay. Well, no, I'm not saying that it's Aries right now. No. What I am saying is that it's, they're calling to Aries, right? Like they're pointing at Aries. And so that's the idea, right? And so, Yenis, I just wanted to clarify what you meant. I translated the Greek, and I'm curious what you meant. I'll have to look at that, because the translation that I used might not be perfect. So if you want, we can talk later with respect to that. But that said, that's the gist of the Serpent and the Flame. I mean, you know, this is definitely symbolic. This is definitely the truth in secret, right? We're not talking about the truth told openly here with the Serpent and the Flame or any of the biblical stuff. What we're talking about is the idea of the language is the same story in all not bodies of knowledge, just told in a different manner. But if you just really look at it, if you just use the code, you can see the truth in everything. And that's what we're trying to get at here. We're trying to get at the fact that all holy books contain the same story, and you can prove it by reducing the algorithm. And that's what we're going to be doing next with the algorithm in the I Ching. Is we're going to take a look at the I Ching, applying an algorithm to the I Ching that has a similar effect to what I'm doing with my algorithm of the every two is a third, and tying that together to show that if the knowledge is correct, it is connected to the one truth, and it doesn't matter what religion, philosophy, theology, it doesn't matter what race, it doesn't matter what time it came from, it doesn't matter what planet it came from. It's the one truth. And so that said, I just need a moment to kind of get my stuff together and heat up my coffee. I'll be back in a couple minutes, and we'll continue with the order and the vortex. Be right back. Alrighty, we're back. So that said, let me just move that cup. So that said, I as far as I'm to understand, I guess I'm understanding that I might be going fast. Is that what you meant? Like I'm going too fast? If that's the case, first of all, I'm very open to feedback. And I don't insult easy, so don't worry. I'm not going to take it personally. So if there is, if you have any advice that you think would help, I'm open to it. But if you think I'm going too fast, then I'm succeeding, because my goal is to disorient you. My goal is to offer you a sip and then give you a fire hose so that you're disoriented, so that when we get to the truth, you can process it easily, because you're in a state to receive emotional information. You're going to process it emotionally at that point. And once you do that, you can then take the information later, and then you can integrate it mentally. But don't process it mentally first. If you do, then you're missing the feeling. Know that feeling. Feel that knowing. Okay, and we talk about that all the time. Again, this is, you could tell any story with this deck in your hand. Okay? Feel the knowing. Let me get rid of that Merkaba. Okay, feel the knowing. Know the feeling. This is the truth coming down, right? And you have to allow yourself to take the truth mentally. The sword is mental energy into the cup, which is the emotional. The truth into your heart first. Then you can process it, and you can have the emotional reaction to the information later mentally. So you're gonna feel the information, and you're going to process the information emotionally later. Okay, that's the process here. So the whole point of this is to put you in a state for this to take place, and disorientation is a good way to do that. Okay, so it's actually designed. There is a madness to my method. Whoa. But all kidding aside, there's a reason that I'm confusing you. So when we get to the part that's the truth, it's going to be spoken openly and plainly, and it's like, oh, I get it. I'm not sure who that is. Sorry, I got something from Messenger, and I'm not sure who that was. But that said, though, so you get the idea. On that note, but I am very open to feedback. I mean, if it's too fast, then certainly I know that my goal is to be understood at the end of the day. But I would welcome you as well to kind of go through the back to the live stream that I keep up, if there's any portion that you feel that you want to go back to. And I'm always open to everybody. If you'd like to give me a call or a text, or you can voicemail, direct message, WhatsApp, email, and I do respond, and I respond at length. It's not just a quick answer, and so I'm open to having a chat. And on a one-on-one, it's a very slow, calm conversation, because it's not the intent of presenting the information to YouTube for people to watch now and later, to get it all out, and within a couple of hours. But that said, that's an important component. If it's coming out too fast, then I have to consider that, right? And maybe I'll do that. No, I kid. I can go slow when I want to, I promise. It's just a matter of when it's appropriate, and it will be soon. Okay, so I'm just going to put this away real quick. And there's something I wanted to show you guys with respect to the I Ching, and so I'm just going to turn that off for a second while I set the desk up. Usually I do this with the camera off, but that's okay. And what we're going to be talking about today is the I Ching and how it correlates to the elemental system, right? We know that the cups and the wands and the pentacles and so forth all have their own suit that is tied to an element. And that is a very kind of intuitive language that we use when we're interrogating our universe, right? We have this idea that while the wand means your will, and it means fire, right? And the cup means your heart, and it means water, right? And the sword means your mind, and it means communication and thought. And then you have the pentacle, which means your body, and it means physical manifestation and these type things. And earth, right? And so the elemental system is very effective, and the system of the tarot is a 3-element system, or fire, water, air, that combine to create earth as a 4th. And the Chinese system uses 5 elements, and there are 64 hexagrams. But what I wanted to do is to kind of talk about the correlations between the I Ching and correlations between all of the different body systems, but obviously as well including the tarot, and unlocking this truth that we're because here's the point, just to be clear with everybody, with respect to why we're doing this work. Like, this was a nice sort of warm and fuzzy kind of tarot channel, right? And then all of a sudden it kind of is like, what's going on here? And so there's a piece of information I just want to get out, and I had come to a conclusion that to maintain the integrity of the art of tarot, and to maintain the integrity of what I believe it's for, and what I believe I can contribute to the conversation, the tarot is designed, in fact all oracles are designed, for one thing, and they're not there to provide answers, right? Yes, the metal is one of that's correct. And then wood and metal. But what they have is this concept where there's this one truth, and like I've stated over and over again, it doesn't matter what organization you belong to, what religion you follow, what culture you belong to. If you look deeply at the doctrine, They're all pointing to the same exact truth. And the I Ching is a nice, elegant way to look at that truth as well. And so the combination of all these bodies of knowledge stuck into a big ball, if you shake it really hard, so the things that are different, this one's named this one, that one's named that one, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and, you know, the Father, Son, Holy Ghost, and all, you know, these different trinities. If you shake it all up, and you're left with a doctrine. And so all the differences are away, and there's this framework for the truth. And, you know, I've mentioned many times with this deck that the reason that I finally decided to put it out was that I feel like it's a contribution. It could be used to unlock any system. And so what we have here is, for instance, the Deacon Wheel, which I've used multiple times on the channel here. And this is a black and white version that I use on purpose in black and white, because I color it in my mind based on the higher and lower world when doing readings, right? And it changes direction and all these other things. The vortices change based on which world you are, and, you know, it flips over and some other things. So, but that said, we're very familiar with this wheel on the channel here, and I use it all the time when trying to describe the fact that that vortex comes from between the elements, and the elements in their divine order are going in one direction, in this particular case clockwise. Wand, cup, sword, pentacle in the middle there, and then the divine order of numbers, which, you know, marches in a counterclockwise direction since the wheel turns clockwise, right? And it's the same idea with the princesses and the princes and the knights and the queens. They go in the opposite directions, and it creates this counter-rotating vortex. Now, remember, this is a 2D version of a sphere with two counter-rotating serpents going up and down and meeting each other, okay? And so if you just take that wheel and turn it into a ball in your head, this wheel, and turn it into a ball in your head, in that ball are two counter-rotating serpents, which give you the direction that the deacons are going, the direction that these are marching, and they interact in a different method when you consider it three-dimensionally, right? And now, where else do we see these kinds of wheels? Well, I have here this a book. This book is called The Book of Changes and the Unchanging Truth. It's my favorite version of the I Ching that's been translated. The author's name is Hua Ching Ni, and he is a very highly respected individual in this art. And so this is not just some, person who is interested in the subject that decided to write this book. And so, just to be clear, this wheel, and I've talked about it over and over again, when you know how to read it, if you're looking at it, it's great. It's a wheel to tell you dates and the signs and the deacons. It's a really good reference chart. But when you know how to read it, it shows you the vortex. And that vortex is the key to unlocking the order of the cards so that everything I'm saying makes sense. Now, if I look at it in the respect to the Chinese system, what we're looking at here, and I'm going to read this little section here for you, just this tiny little section on the bottom, okay? And we're going to take a look at what this wheel is. This is the cyclic rotation of the elements throughout the period, okay? And each one of these, well, I'll read it to you, but you'll notice there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these. And you'll see each one of these is a different sort of period of time, okay? It's the elemental march. This is the elemental march, right? The 5 elements marching through the year. And this is them interacting, which creates the vortices, right? This is the I Ching version. This isn't something that you're going to read in Kabbalah. It's not something you're going to read in the Rosicrucian stuff. This isn't something that you're going to read but however, there have been correlations, like Golden Dawn and Crowley have made correlations to the I Ching, and we're going to talk about that. So I'm going to read this little bottom paragraph here, okay? And you tell me if it sounds familiar to anybody, okay? In the cycle of 60, each individual unit of combined energy is a beginning, a transition, and an end. It is complete onto itself. It is also a part of something else. The entire universe is comprised of such individual units of energy combinations in small circles of 10 are shown in the chart above. These cycles of universal energy are far from being a matter of distant concern in our daily lives, but are actually of the very context in which we live. This is the value of the knowledge passed down to us from the ancient developed ones. Okay? Come on. It's just the three triangles. It's the divine vortices. I mean, it doesn't take, you know, a rocket scientist to see what we're looking at here. And actually, this information is available to anybody with the eyes to see. This is not something that is strictly for somebody who's been trained in some kind of hermetic art, or somebody who's been trained in some kind of circumstance. This is just very simple stuff that we're talking about. And this is the same knowledge that I speak about as far as the tarot is concerned, as far as Hermeticism is concerned, as far as interrogating your universe using a vocabulary of truth. If the system is true, it speaks to the one truth. And so let's look at the I Ching for a moment. The idea that we're trying to get to here is, make sure I've got everything up here. Pardon. Okay. It's an elemental system. Okay? And so when you're talking about an elemental system, you have, let me make sure I'm on the right tool here. There we go. Pardon me. For instance, the way the system works is two types of line, right? There's the active line and the passive line. Okay, very basic. And there's combinations of these, and the combinations of these individual elements make up a system of the 64 hexagrams, right? So each one of these is an element on its own, and then they're combined to create what's called a trigram. And each one of these trigrams equals one of the elements: fire, water, air, so on. And there's multiple. And so let's take a look at that and why that's significant with respect to the tarot. So I'm going to show you a quick chart, and this chart is a good way to look at the trigrams and hexagrams and how they come together, and then we'll talk about how that relates to the tarot. Okay? And so this is a chart that has the different trigrams across the top, then the trigrams across the side, and it tells you which hexagram to reference in your divine work, right? So for instance, if we take the 3-line version, which is like the pure masculine energy, and we mix it with the pure feminine energy, which is, where is the queen? Right here. Okay? Which is the same symbol, but just lines. We get the 12th. But this is basically earth over heaven, or heaven over earth, right? And so what we're talking about, let me just clarify this. We have these 3 lines, and this means heaven. And now these mean earth. Okay, so earth supporting heaven, or do we have heaven supporting earth, right? And these are two different ways to look at this idea. And now there's various other elements, right? And so if we look at that chart, we'll see that there are multiple elements, right? We have heaven, thunder, water, mountain, earth, wind, fire, lake. And then there's combinations of each of these that create these hexagrams. So what does that have to do with the tarot? Well, let's take a look at one deck that I think is very valuable for this work, and that's the Milo DuQuette's deck of Ceremonial Magic, the Tarot of Ceremonial Magic. Okay, so when you're reading your tarot cards, we know now, since we've done the work on the court cards, that the court cards represent, based on their suit and based on their station, right? So, for instance, the queens, all queens represent water. If it's a queen, it means water. If it's a princess, it means earth. If it's a prince or a knight in the Rider Waite, but if it's a prince, it means air, and if it's a king or the knight in the Thoth system, it means fire, right? All of them. All the queens mean water. So you'll see that represented here in blue, right? And on the card, water, and then represented as well is earth. Why earth? Because she's the disk, which means earth. So we have a combination of element systems here where we're looking at the system of, because she's a queen, she represents water, and because she's a disk, she represents earth. So what is this? Water, earth, right? And now let's go ahead and look at that graph that I had mentioned. Pardon, I don't have a lot of space on my desk here. All right, and so let's look at these symbols here. The top three are a dash and then two lines, right? And so we're going to find the dash and two lines. And then we're going to find the two lines and a dash. She's kind of like the opposite of each, right? And so the upper trigram is going to be lake, meaning water. And then we're going to find the lower trigram, which is mountain, earth. So she is lake and mountain, fire, earth. Okay, and that's why that trigram is there on the... And so if you have an experience with the I Ching, you can say, okay, well, now I can read the hexagram and get a sense of the Queen of Disc, right? So let's just do that. Let's go through the exercise. What we determined here is that this is lake and this is mountain, which would make her number 31. All right, we start with the upper and then the lower, and then we find 31. So we reference number 31. Oh, wow, that was cool. I turned right to it. Mutual attraction. Mutual attraction brings joyful love. One will benefit by being upright and persistent. Marriage brings good fortune. So that's obviously the truth in secret, or that's the lie told openly, the basic guidance. And so there's the different lines of what these mean. But we would go through this process again here. In this hexagram, lake is above mountain. The image represents the mutual attraction and interaction of these two kinds of natural energy. Mountain is the youngest son of nature, and lake is the youngest daughter. Therefore, mutual attraction or love occurs naturally. And also, if you consider the fact that Earth contains water, right? It holds water. And so there's this idea that Earth containing water is a natural thing. Water wants to be held. Otherwise, it will keep traveling down until it finds something to hold it. Right? It's actually a beautiful message. Right? What is water doing? Water is in a state of lament. The queen is mourning the loss of her husband. So you get the idea, okay? And there's other, all the courts have some type of reference to it, right? So what did we learn about princes? Well, all the princes are air. And this happens to be the sword, which also means air, so he's the airy part of air. So you'll notice in this card, both of those are referenced there, right? We have the air and the air. Okay. And so let's go through the exercise one more time to give you the full picture of what we're talking about here. And so he's the airy part of air, so we're going to find the top is two lines and then the dash. So that's going to be here. It's called wind. And then we're going to find the other wind. Okay, and we're going to put those together and get 57. And so we're going to find 57. And this is a way for you to just get another insight into the court card's personalities. That's the truth and secret. The courts don't have personalities. 56, traveling on a journey. Only minor undertakings go well. Remember, he's not the king yet. In this hexagram, this is the wrong one. Fire above mountain. I need air, air. Did I say 56? Or 36? Wind. Oh, 57. Pardon me. Gentle wind, submissiveness. Submissiveness can further one in achieving minor things. It is good to assist a powerful leader with great goal. So this is the advisor to the leader. In ancient times, before societies were created, people followed the example of nature with an unspoiled mind. From wind or air, they learned obedience and submissiveness. All things depend on wind for survival. For the gentleness of the wind, one can learn how to give and take. From the force of the wind, one can learn how to balance and control oneself. Wind is the energy which acts in the invisible ways, yet achieves visible results. One cannot see the wind except by its effect on something. It exists as its interaction of subtle energy, yet expresses itself substantially. This is the first time that the element actually gets utilized. He gets the element because he wins it from the princess by going through her trials, and she bestows it upon him. So now that he has it, he's in the state of using it. And that's the purpose of the prince, is to allow that element to interact with the world. He's the one who brings the element into the world to basically move the story forward. That's what his job to do is to move the story forward. And I've told that before with respect to the court cards, right? When we're looking at the this story, if you'll notice, it's that final prince that moves that story forward. And so that's why he's there at the end, which is really the beginning of the next story with the old queen. The beginning of every story is the end of the last one. That's why we can't answer the question of what happened before the Big Bang. You know what happened before the Big Bang? The last one. The end of the last story. That's it. The end of the last story is the beginning of this one. It's like a radio serial where you start the next episode, and it's like, thanks for joining. If we remember last week, and the story just continues. And that was that was the first thing spoken. And what happened last week was, and this is just that constant cycle with the new prince moving the story forward, right? And this happens to be the heir of air prince. So that's the gist with respect to the elemental system of the I Ching, but more specifically how that can be utilized to get a better sense of the cards for if you're a reader, or if there's something that you are interested in exploring a little more with respect to different forms of knowledge that all focus on the same truth, the one truth. The idea here is the fact that every system, every religion that is correct in its presentation, that is pointing to the truth, has a vortex. Every has a fall or a descent of some kind. Have some concept of polarity and gender as separate things. Every two has a three. Like I talked about yesterday, black and white are opposites, but they also have another opposite, which is color. And then if you take that, then black and white and color are opposites, put them together, the third is gray. Right? And so if you keep doing the algorithm, you wind up at gray. Okay? And so let's consider this with respect to the I Ching. Okay? Because there's something called the Inner Trigram. And the Inner Trigram is a very specific idea where you take a hexagram. It doesn't matter which one. Let's do a random one. 2 dash dash dash. Right? There you go. So we have a hexagram. And what we're going to do then is to make a new hexagram. And the new hexagram is going to be designed around the idea of the inner message here. Right? The inner message. And so how we do that is we take this that we just created, and we're going to look at this one, and this one. And that becomes the new bottom of the new trigram, hexagram. So we're going to start here, and then line, line. And then we're going to do the same thing, but starting here and take the next 3. Okay, this one, and then this one. And then we're going to draw the new one, okay? There's a reason I'm doing this, I promise. So notice these two are different, right? This one started with a line, and this one has dashes. This one then is dashes, and this is a line. Then there's 2 lines, and then there's a line, and then there's 2 dashes. Let's do the process again, okay? We're going to take these 3, 1, 2, 3, so that's this. And then we're going to take this 1, 2, 3, right? And that's this. You get the idea? Now let's just do that one more time. I wonder how many steps you have to take in the I Ching before you always wind up at the same exact result. Let's find out. So that said, let's just do another one. Let's do a one that's kind of like an opposite. All right. So the upper one is 2 dashes, a line, and a line, and the lower one is 2 lines and then the dash, right? So they're kind of like opposites. And so if we take this idea here, and let's just do the permutation. 1, 2, 3. This is 3 lines for the new one. And then we're going to take 1, 2, 3. It's the same thing. Right? And so it's basically becomes the new hexagram. And that new hexagram, sorry, I'm not very familiar with GIMP, and I'm not familiar enough with it to be able to actually navigate. I'm normally a Photoshop user, and I no longer am a member of Creative Cloud, and so I lost Photoshop after, you know, working with it for 20 years, and I have no idea how to use GIMP. It's very clunky too. And so the final thing here to remember is the idea that there's a certain number of steps that you need to take to where that hexagram will always wind up as one of 2 options. And so now let's add some feminine to this, and we'll do a bunch of dashes, and then a line, and then maybe another line, and then more dashes. All right, so now we have a bunch of feminine energy, right? In fact, it's mostly feminine with a little balance in the middle, but mostly feminine. And now we're going to take the same idea and let's apply that algorithm to it. So we have these for 3 first, and that's going to be this here, and then a line, and then a line. Now if we go again, starting in the next section here, we're going to go these 3. So it's line, line, dash. Okay, line, line, dash. And you can see what's going to happen here. 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3. It winds up as either heaven or earth during the permutation. And there's other things that you can land on. The only other options that you have, as far as like everything always landing on heaven or earth, is where each one is opposite. And so what that would wind up looking like would be, pardon me, there we go. These are the 4 options that everything lands on, period. You would wind up with this idea of the base element itself, in this case heaven or earth, right? And the last one that you would wind up with is the opposites of these, which would be this, which is the correct order. This is the divine order in the I Ching. This is the Chinese version, or the opposite of that, right? And this is where they all land up. So if you apply the algorithm enough times to any hexagram, you will wind up with one of these options that will eventually wind up at either the divine on the top, like the holy masculine and holy feminine, or on the bottom, which is the interactions that create physical reality manifest. So these are the holy, the upper world, the top of the tree, beyond the abyss. And then down here is the lower world, physically manifest, as the interactions between the polarity. Okay. And so that's the combination of the idea of how you apply the I Ching to the tarot, very easily using the elemental system of the quartz, and also the idea that they share this divine vortex, right? There's this concept of the divine vortex in both bodies of knowledge, and they also speak about the idea of applying an algorithm to reduce the answer to the one truth, which is all just the truth in secret. Which means that with a little bit of looking, you can see the truth told openly in there. And I've told the truth told openly a couple of days ago, and on last night's stream as well. And basically, this is referring to the same idea of the fact that at the end of the day, you're going to wind up with this one truth. And that one truth is really the answer. It's not about we descended and now we're ascending and we meet in the middle. That's the lie told openly. The truth in secret is, no. We're one being going up and down. We just see the mirror and so we think there's two. Okay, that's the truth in secret. The truth told openly is we never descended. None of this ever happened. Now, the reason that that's hard to grasp is because the truth told openly first doesn't work. It's like, well, okay. So we never left. Yeah, but I'm looking at a desk and listening to a guy on the internet. So obviously we did descend because I'm here. And we'll get to that. But so that's the idea of the algorithm in the I Ching. Yeah, thanks. 57. And so, it's an important exercise mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and within your work of crafting your world, to consider all these different symbol systems and the fact that they point to rightness. And you'll know there's a rightness in it because it's telling the story multiple ways and the story's the same. And so that said, any questions about anything? Let's see here. I just read a book called Plant Spiritual Healing that taught me about those other two. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, the other... Okay. Yeah, wood. Yeah, metal and wood. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. And, it's a meditative process. That's the point. A lot of the work, the practical work is good, like getting the cards out and moving them around or throwing the coins or doing the yarrow sticks and divining the hexagrams or... doing the work and drawing the sigils like across the flower, right? You get your flower and then you draw your sigils across the flower. And, going through those things are cool. It's like, it's important to go through the exercise and to see the mechanics of it. But don't get too hung up on the mechanics. Because it's really about, once you understand the mechanics, let them point you to the truth, because that's all they do. The tarot doesn't give you the truth, it gives you answers. It points you to the truth. Answers can be wrong. The truth is infallible. And so it comes down to the fact that if you're seeking answers, that's what you're going to get. And answers can be wrong. If you're looking for the truth, then don't ask questions. Questions only get you answers. Questions and answers are two sides of the same coin. Instead, look for the truth. And so as far as the serpent and the flame, that was fun, right? We talked about the blowing of the horn toward Aries, and we talked about, the serpent and the rod, right? The staff of Aaron held by Moses that parted the seas and became a serpent that ate all the other serpents in front of the Pharaoh, created this pillar of fire to protect them and create light and darkness. And, so we have the vortex, which is the abyss that creates light and darkness in between, not letting anybody pass. I mean, it's very... And we have the idea of Adam and Eve kicked out of Eden and the angel of fire blocking their entry. They can't enter back in. And so you get this idea. And so at the end of the day, the doctrine is the same everywhere. And it's important to go through that exercise. And then we have the algorithm in the I Ching, which was just driving that point home, right? So we have the Bible, we have the Wiccans, now we have the I Ching, all pointing to the same truth, which is also, essentially illustrated here. If we're looking at the, particularly the key to estrangement, the leaving, right? The fall. It's that idea of that vortex creating that union, that interaction, right? This doesn't work, right? I mean, does that look like that would work? Or like, does that work? Right? There's a divine order for it to work properly, and this is it. And then we have obviously the key to the inner sanctum, which I shared on the channel as well, and there it is. And in case anyone's wondering, here's how you achieve conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel. But yeah, so that said, though, the idea here is that the story is told across any body of knowledge that is correct. And that's, incidentally, a test for that body of knowledge. Does it pass the test? Incidentally, I'm putting the kit together, and so this is going to be coming with the deck when it's produced, when it's a printed produced deck. It's going to come with a not this wheel, but it's going to come with the Deacon Wheel, so you can do the work. It's going to come with instructions for the all of the different stuff that we've talked about on the channel here, so that when you're sitting down to do your work, all your tools will be right there in front of you. The two decks, one black and white, one color to do the spread, which we're going to be talking about here next. The final working, I've revealed different pieces of it, and tonight I'm going to show you how to do the whole thing. And then the End of Sorrow, which is a big one. I think there's a lot of people out there that need to hear what I'm going to say tonight, and it's something I experienced personally too. So it's coming from a real place. It's not some thing I read in a book. It's not something I saw on some show. It's an experience I had, and it's an important one that I think can help a lot of people. And so I hope you stick around for that. So the next portion that we're going to be speaking about is the final working, the reconciliation. And what we're referring to here is the march of the courts, moving into the rise of the proletary, and now this final working, which is the idea of the reconciliation, the final work, the completed answer, that is the key. The instructions for crafting the key. And once we have that key, we can just unlock the door, walk into the inner sanctum. And what's in there? What's in the inner sanctum? You are. And that's the only place to find you, like the real you. That's the truth told openly. The only place to find the real you is in the inner sanctum. That's it. However, we can get there. And I walked everybody through it on the This Will Wake You Up period. There's an experience I spoke about of me going through that experience, my personal journey through the abyss. And hopefully it can be effective to help people to understand that process. Like, what are we doing here? Are we looking for answers with the cards, or are we looking to use it for what it was designed for? The tarot, the I Ching, the runes, all of these are pointing at that same truth. That's why the Hanged Man is Odin hanging from a tree. Where did the runes come from? From a vision he had hanging upside down on a tree. The runes came to Odin. And so consider that process there. Hanging upside down, it descended to earth and came out as manifested discrete pieces instead of the divine one. Same thing with the hexagrams. It's only one dot in heaven, but down here it's broken up into this 64-bit system, right? Which is the most effective elemental system I've ever used. The I Ching is powerful, man. It does not care about your feelings. It will tell you the truth and smack you in the face with it. But it's good. It's very easy to use the tarot to see what you want to see about yourself. But if you use it properly in the divine order, using the algorithm, apply the vortex to the upper world, you will see this spread unlock, and this is literally the story of your birth and the creation of the universe simultaneously. And so what we're going to do tonight is to talk about the final working, which is the answer to how to read that so that it all makes sense. Okay, so again, just need a minute to I'm going to have to make a new cup. This one I heated up, and now it's ice cold, and I don't want to heat it up a second time, so I'm just going to make a new cup. But that said, I appreciate everybody who stuck around. I'm going to be back very shortly. Just need the length of time it takes a Keurig to brew a cup, and I'll be back. And we'll speak about the final working, the reconciliation. Thank you for bearing my cheese. Humor is everything, really, You got to keep it light. See you in a bit. Alrighty, so we're back. So we've been jumping around quite a bit, right? And that's by design. It's the idea of reminding everybody. Like, I've mentioned a few times that I've done the reading, so you don't have to, right? Like, Isis Unveiled, The Secret Teaching of All Ages, La Megaton, Picatrix, the 3 Books of Solomon. This is Goetic. The Emerald Tablet, right? 777, Morals and Dogma. How many people can you say actually read Morals and Dogma? Right. It's required reading if you're a Freemason. Book 4, if you're considering Freemasonry or you were interested in their studies, definitely read Morals and Dogma. Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Thoth, like you name it, right? So, and each one of these, the more I read through these, the more it became obvious it's the same story. And once comes to you. Can't be taught. Once it comes to you, you'll see it everywhere, because it's so right that it becomes your new worldview. And then you look behind you and realize that you've walked through the door. You're there. All right? And then what happens? Something interesting. Everything turns right again. And suddenly the sky is blue, and you know, it's almost like if you've ever people who wear glasses. If you've ever gone to get a new pair and you go, you know, and then a couple days passes, they come in, you go to the store, they wipe, you know, and then they put them on. The trees have leaves. You can see the little bits on the ground, and like suddenly everything is sharp and clear. It's the same idea. All of these different bodies of knowledge have the same shared concept. And there's many ways that you can approach learning that. And I think one of the most effective ways to learn the truth, and this is proven through religion and the way that they approach, as well as the secret orders. The whole idea is the ritual reenactment of a holy event. Why do the Wiccans put a sword into a cup or an athame? Like, why do they do that? Because they're representing the divine mind being installed into the profane heart. They're talking about the mind, the masculine, this idea of the active force who was given birth, emerged from the feminine, being installed into the feminine here. So feminine energy being manifested as a man, being dropped into the woman again. So it's woman into woman through the man. And that is represented right here. The woman manifesting the man to drop it into the woman below. What is it? Divine intelligence, the mind of God. This whole union, this sexual magic has to do very simply with thinking with your heart and feeling with your mind. Whose heart? Your higher selves. Whose mind? Your higher selves. We are a vessel. And when we're in the lower world, we are not ourselves, we are a vessel. And that's one of the reasons that it's so easy for us to be swayed. Because we walk around being fooled by our ego, thinking that our thoughts are ours, and that, you know, this character that we're pretending to be is real. But if we stopped and realized, no, I'm pretending, this isn't who I am, right? I don't have a choice but to pretend, so it's okay, I'm not being dishonest. How am I going to interface with my reality otherwise? Through a personality. But that's not who I am. What is a personality? It's a vocabulary. That's all it is. And you can change the vocabulary that you interrogate your universe with very easily. Use the tarot, use the I Ching, use the elemental system of color when you're looking at the world. Or use the algorithm of every two has a third. Love and hate are opposites, but they're not really. They're kind of two sides of the same coin, the opposite being not caring at all. And so, black and white are opposites, but they're two sides of the same coin, and the opposite is color. And then you can apply the algorithm again. Okay, well, if black and white and color are opposites, then what's the opposite of that? Gray. We landed at gray. It only took one step. So you understand, applying the algorithm more than once gives you the one truth, no matter what system that you are using it on. Bible, have fun. It's really easy, and it just shows you the truth. And so that's the idea behind that algorithm, and how we work with it makes a big difference. And so what the idea of the Meet the Courts, the whole idea of this reading, starting with this spread here, which happens to be my birth. This is my story. This is the story of my life from beginning to end. In fact, this tells my death. This tells my rebirth. This tells where I came from and where I'm going. This tells how I'm going to get there. The trials I'm going to have to face in order to achieve that. And that prince at the end is me walking beyond the veil, or attempting. And then the story continues, right? And so how do we access that upper world and know what that is? Because I've mentioned it before. The voice of your soul is literally always speaking to you. Always. Right now, your voice is speaking to you. And it's hard to hear. It's hard to hear because we listen with our ears and we listen with our, mind. And we can't hear it. We're trying to think, what is it going to sound like? Is it a distant sound in my head? Is it a color? And so what we discover when we do the work, I'm not sure where that is. It's there. When we do the work, and this is the important part of this process, is to just look for the correlations. When you're trying to hear your own voice from above, you can't hear it with your mind. You have to hear the voice from above with your heart. The sword is the element of air. It's the element of mind, and it's the element of communication. So whenever communication is considered, sword is considered. Communicating the mind into the heart. That's why you can't hear it, because you're listening with your head. You're listening with your ears. Listen with your heart. And then think about it emotionally. And it'll come to you. And so what the story is designed to do, ultimately, is to tell that story. And I've gone through that before as far as the bottom portion now. We're looking at the bottom part of this process. Okay, and now if you look at the diagram here, on this bottom section is what we're looking at here. And this top section we're looking at here. And each one is a holographic version of the other. So this bottom section has 4 cards in the middle, 4 cards on the bottom in the middle, and then those 2 on the outside to make 10 total. And what is this? The prior queen and the future prince. The future queen and the prior prince. And then this upper portion here is the same thing, but you'll notice some things have been done. So some of the cards, most of them are upside down suddenly, but these 2 on the outside aren't. The Queen of Sword and the Knight of Sword aren't. They didn't move. And then you've got some other stuff going on, right? So what are we looking at? Let's just try to decode this. Because of the divine vortex, it only swapped the middle 2 elements. This is the divine order. The divine order is wand, cup, sword, pentacle, and that is the order. But it got reversed in the upper world when it fell, and so those get reversed. Now, why didn't these get reversed? Because they're pinned on the pillars. And by being pinned on the pillars, they're not able to swap. They kind of get stuck in place, right? And so what we're referring to here is the tree of life, right? And there's those pillars on either side of the tree there. And now those pillars hold things in place. They prevent things from moving. And so in this particular case, that stuff's not going to move, but all the stuff in between does move, right? And so just to be clear, that's why the middle swapped and the 2 didn't on the outside. That's really the reason that that's the case. But now, what does that mean? We apply the algorithm to the reading on the top. So we take the bottom here, and then we flip it over and move it up, just like turn it in space and put it on top, or lay out another deck is really more appropriate. That's why you need 2 decks, and use black and white. It's much better for your mind, trust me. And when we start combining them into one thing where there's black and white and color together, it pops. And so it's important to do that if you can. And then this top one we've applied the algorithm to, right? So what does that mean? Anywhere there is a sword, turn it upside down. Anywhere there's a cup, turn it upside down. And now, flip them. And that's the gist. And so what that's going to wind up doing is changing that upper area in a different manner. And now I haven't done that here. I just flipped it upside down and then pinned the queen and the knight. But you could easily go through the process of doing that, right? And so that's what we're trying to get here. Anywhere that there's a cup in the lower, we're going to want to have a sword in the upper. And so on the bottom, we have the princess here of cup would wind up on the top being converted into the princess of sword, and so on. All of the wands and the pentacles won't change, but the rest of the story will. So what you're now looking at when you've made that change on top is the view of this current circumstance from your higher self. That's the soul talking. Every 2 has a 3. Now we know what your soul is saying, we know what you're saying. We apply the algorithm of every 2 has a 3, and we have the answer. Okay, and so this is the first part of the reading. That's the first working, right? The second working is doing the same thing, but with the new key. This is the key of the descent. This is the estrangement. Now we need to get to the key of the ascent, going back up. Okay? And now that's a different circumstance, right? We're not talking about here the idea of energies flowing and things working nicely. Things are a little different now. And you'll notice now, these didn't flip, but these did. So suddenly, the pillars failed us. And there's this middle area, this like a middle pillar, quote unquote, right? That pinned the ones in the middle, but now the outside ones flipped. Okay? And you'll see what's going on here. There's a rejection taking place on the lower world, rejecting the higher world. And so it won't take that, and so they're flying up. It won't take the flames, and they're flying up. It won't take the water, and it's flying up. It's denied. Why? When I call up to God and say, "Are you there?" I hear from below, "There is no God." Why? Because the voice of God gets flipped and then sounds like it's coming from below in the opposite words. And we hear that and it scares us, and so we deny it. And if you go back to my story on "This will open you," or "This will wake you up," period, I talk about that process of actually working through that fear and recognizing the truth. And I encourage you to watch that if you haven't seen it. But so essentially what's going to happen here is rather than the algorithm of the descent, you use this one. Okay, and then this is the divine order for the ascent. So the first working we talked about, this is now the second working. You take that bottom reading, your birth reading, and now apply this. So we're going to swap all the pentacles and the wands, and we're going to move, same thing, counter rotate it up, but lock the middle instead of the outsides. And then finally, well, we have that same process. But now what's going to happen is that the black and white's on the bottom and the color's on top. Okay. And so that's the second working. It's the same as the first, but using a different algorithm. And you wind up locking the middle instead of the outsides. So those do change. And then there's the final working. And the final working is really very special. It's the idea of we've had some resultant things take place here. Once we've done all this work, we have a new spread on the bottom that has been completely changed. Suits have changed, things have changed direction. There's kind of it's like a new reading. And we've also done that in the second working as well. And so what we have now is a new higher world and a new lower world that are in this new scene, and that is the final working. And so what we wind up doing is taking the result of the first bottom and the result of the second top and putting them together. And instead of turning them, so you're not going to spin it in space, you're going to just swap them. That's your answer. No, that's the truth. And each time you apply that change, there's going to be a point you get to where you come to the same result each time. And that same result is the one truth. And so that's the purpose of the reading. And so essentially that reveals the reconciliation. The idea here is, and I haven't done it, like, again, I didn't do the stuff for you, and the point is for you to go through the work. I encourage and I'm open to anybody who wants to join that process with me. I'm willing to walk you through the process of even developing the deck. Go grab some cardboard, we'll draw it together until I have it ready to sell. Once it's ready to sell, then I'll be charging for the deck and the whole kit. It'll come with 2 tarot decks. We'll kick around which ones. Right now I'm between Thoth and DuQuette for the color, and then the Hermetic Tarot for the black and white. Or another combination that I found that I love is the Tarot of the Abyss and the Lightseer Tarot for color and black and white. It's going to come with 2 decks. It's going to come with this deck, but it'll be a completed version of it. And so this will be a completed version with real art, right? This is just my drawn version to get it out into the world. And so that it's been revealed, like it can't be unrevealed. It's on, it's in Google's servers forever. And so that was the purpose of just getting it out like raw on cardboard. And some other tools. There's got a couple of pentacles that have some stuff on it that you can use to assist in the work. And the goal of this deck, just to be clear, can it be used to tell all kinds of great divinatory stuff? Yes. Can it be used for really cool numerology? Totally. Write your name in tarot cards, and then you can have a pictorial representation of your name as a symbol based on the suits, and you can draw a scene that has water and fire in a certain case based on the way the layout works, and have like an iconic image of what your name means or your date of birth means. There's a lot of ways that you can use this system to kind of play with, and playing is good. We're here to play. Don't miss the purple. But that's not the goal of the work, right? When you're done playing and it's time to learn the truth, the goal is specifically here to elicit a response in your mind and heart simultaneously, where they both realize the truth at once. And so it's not like you're kind of getting it here and then you're kind of getting it. It's like bang, both at the same time. And when that happens, there's no going back. You literally just dissolve. You don't exist any longer because you never have. You are a lie. Your body's real, but you aren't. And that's the idea of the reconciliation. There's these different steps through the process. And now you could use strictly just this and learn a lot. Pardon that 3 of Swords. I'm not sure why that's there. Let me remove that. It looks like there's something hiding right there too, behind the King of Wands. What is going on there? Okay. Looks like I was doing a reading for somebody. So, yeah. That said, though, okay. You can just use this alone and get great insight into who you are and your trials. Each one of those, below the Page of Cup, are those 3 majors stacked up. Those 3 majors are representative of the periods of time, obviously, but they also represent the deacons that are hidden underneath them, that are the actual trial. And for an explanation of that, again, contact me and I'll be happy to share it with you. And there's a couple of people who have reached out that are interested in going through this work with me. And I'm going to be doing that over the next several days and weeks. With individuals, with the purpose of waking people up. And if anyone else is interested in going through that process, just simply contact me and we can discuss what it takes, how long it takes, what to expect, and if you're actually ready for it, and if it's something that you want to do, that we can go through the process. This is as valuable as seeing a psychologist that knows you personally. And depending upon your level of openness, it can really be very, very insightful. But then when you apply, because imagine, this is what we thought the tarot was. You get these 4 suits, and it's in the 10 numbers, and then you have the majors, and they have the court cards, and then so on and so forth. And then this one means giving, and then this one means, the destruction, and this. And then we realize, wait, it's twice as big as we thought. There's this whole different, separate way to read the cards. that swap the direction of the divine order so that it changes your whole concept of what you're looking at, and you read the cards differently. And then you realize, wait a minute, it's actually way bigger than I thought. There's 4 different ways to read this, and it has to do with the higher world ascending, the lower world receiving the descent, the lower world wanting to ascend, and the higher world being rejected and crying over it, right? And it's just it's a beautiful picture when you let yourself have it, as far as what the actual wisdom is that it's trying to teach, which is the one truth. So under that level of thinking, it isn't difficult to find it everywhere. You see it all over. And that's the beauty of that is that you can apply that algorithm to any circumstance in your life. Once it becomes part of your vocabulary, what is a personality? What is an identity? It's a vocabulary. This is the language I speak to show you who I think I am. And so you can even interrogate your own personality. You can interrogate your own past without cards, just understanding the language and say, okay, well, what is this and what is that? They're not opposites. They're 2 sides of the same coin. And what's the opposite of those 2 things? And you will have insight. And keep applying that algorithm until you find the gray. You're going to find the truth. I don't care what question you ask. If you continue to apply that algorithm, you're going to come to the same answer. And it will dawn on you that all questions have the same answer. If I really dig deep enough and look past the answers, I see the truth. And that's what we're trying to do. And so the last thing I wanted to speak about tonight before we kind of get into readings and stuff, and thankfully we're kind of early tonight, so I'm nice and fresh, and I'm looking forward to throwing cards. But it's an important topic. And I call it the end of sorrow. And the reason is because of an experience that I had that really woke me up to how to literally end sorrow. Okay? And we all go through loss. Some of it intentional. I intentionally went through the destruction of my identity several times in my life. Die daily. Right? Die daily. So that you can shed yourself of the things that you don't need and aren't you, and it gives you the opportunity every day to rebuild. Healing doesn't work. I'm sorry, psychologists, psychiatrists out there. I'm sorry, self-help book people, heal your soul people, whatever the case. Healing doesn't work. Healing is taking the thing you used to be and trying to be that. It's like taking something that is damaged and trying to fix it to make it what it used to be. And sometimes things happen that are that can't be healed. You can't heal death. You can't heal the guilt of not saying what you needed to before somebody is gone and you can never speak to them again. You know, you can't heal decades of damage to your mind, body, and soul with drugs and try to get back to what you were before all that. And that's okay, because what you can do, and this is the power of what we're trying to do here, is what we can do is to be open to transformation. That's the, illness, healing, 2 sides of the same coin, transformation. That's the truth. So it's not about healing, it's about transforming. And how do we transform? We realize who we are. And now here's the experience that I went through. There was a period of time a while back, almost 10 years now, I guess. About 9 years ago, I suppose. My grandmother passed away. This is on my mother's side, and she was a ray of sunshine, a joyous, beautiful, very pretty woman. Was the rock of the family emotionally. There was never tumult in her presence because she didn't tolerate it. And it's not that she didn't tolerate it from the respect that she was a toughie. That was the Italian grandma. she didn't tolerate it because she was just in rightness. You know, she was a Catholic woman, but walked it. Like, she didn't walk around preaching. She didn't walk around quoting the Bible. You know, I mean, I did hear plenty of stories how, like, I was, as a baby, there was a picture of, like, a smoked Mary figure in the picture. Oh, Michael was blessed by Mary. I heard that kind of nonsense, or I heard stuff about, like, you know, visions and things, and that's cool. So she did have a spiritual side to her, even though she was a religious Catholic. But what she was peace and joy, right? And when she went, that was tough. And just short of a year later, my mother passed. And that was like, wow, that was tough. And then it dawned on me, or at least I say to myself, that my grandma went first, so she didn't watch my mother go. Because, you know, watching a child die is you don't do well with that, right? And so, wow, like, you know, that was a biggie. And then my business failed, and I got a divorce, and I moved out of state, and it was, I lost literally everything. And at a time where I thought things were doing pretty good, actually. I started a business where, you know, we were doing really good. We were, you know, on track to make our second million. It was a big deal. Like doing database stuff. It was techie stuff. But that, and it's all gone. And here I am with nothing, empty. I mean, you want to say empty, it's not a joke. And so, long story short, I'm in a different place and feeling kind of empty. And I get a message that a friend of mine killed himself. They claim over a girl, but no one ever kills himself over a girl. There's something there prior that activates that, right? And the girl had nothing to do with it. And that was a shock, to say the least. Anyone who's been touched by suicide knows that it's not a joke, and you can't resolve it. Like, there's no healing. It's just anger and frustration, and then you start getting angry at them for being selfish, and then you start, and all these emotions flow through you. It was really, really something, I tell you what. And just a couple of months later, like literally, I think 3 months later, my grandfather died, which was my grandma's husband, right? And then my grandmother on my other side passed away, and now everyone was dead. And it was a very short period of time. My grandmother, my mother, my friend killed himself. I lost a business. I was divorced and left the state. My friend kills himself, and both grandparents die. A very close friend of mine who lived next door to me was beaten to the point of that he's a vegetable. He's still a vegetable. We still don't know who did it and what the circumstance was. We have some ideas, but we're never going to know. He can't talk. He's an empty soul that he can't communicate, and it's hard because I know he's in there. Anyway, that was really difficult, right? And so now I'm at my end because, I mean, it's so much loss that it's like I was seeing the world through the lens of loss. That's all that existed. It didn't even hurt anymore. I heard static in my head. I didn't eat. My girlfriend at the time was going to call the cops because I sat in a chair for 10 days. I didn't bathe. I didn't eat. I'd sleep. It was I was just so done. And that's where I was when I got a phone call from my sister that my cousin had killed himself. He hung himself, and my niece found him. My niece, who is cerebral palsy. And knowing that she's going to have this image in her head. You want to talk about sorrow. And everyone goes through their stuff. This is not a sob story. It's actually the opposite of that. You know, I've come to some realizations in my life, and one of them I'm trying to share with everybody here on the channel is the idea of who we really are and where we really are. I've said it over and over again. You were born. Everything I'm about to say is the truth told openly. No more secrets, no more nonsense. You were born at the beginning of time. You exist now, at the end of time, waiting for yourself to catch up. And you're playing it out at the same time in the middle. You are there. You know the end because you lived it already. You already lived it. You're at the end of time in unison. This is all taking place and you're at the top. You made it past the abyss. You're there. And you're here also working through it at the same time. But now consider what that means. Who else is at the end of time? With you right now. You know who's at the end of time right now with you? My grandmother. And she has really pretty blue eyes and a gorgeous smile and blonde hair, and she's a precious lady that really, you'll know because she's nothing but warmth. My mother is up there with you and me now. I'm with her. I'm there. When she died and went to heaven, I was there waiting for her. There was never a moment that she was in heaven waiting for me to show back up. Mandy is in heaven waiting. But I'm there with her. Mandy is a little dog. That was my grandparents' dog when I was a kid. She's a beagle. She looked really cute in her Santa hat as a kid. She was a great dog. And the fact is she's with me now. And now here's the point of what I'm trying to make here. We have the power to go there. This is how I had the experience, and this is what woke it up for me, and this might help some people. There's this weird sensation that you can get sometimes if you're in a quiet room and you close your eyes. Imagine, like for instance, we all have a childhood bedroom, right? Now you're not going to leave the place you are right now. I'm sitting in a chair in the Hudson Valley in upstate New York in the mountains, in the same chair I sit in every night, and I'm not going to leave this chair. I just want to be clear about that. This isn't some magical, mystical, new age woo. We are talking about reality right now. This is real. I closed my eyes. And I imagined her next to me. Now, don't talk to her. But I imagine her next to me and I can feel her there. I just can. I know it. And now, forget where you are. Forget who you are as far as your age and stuff. And just remember the feeling of being in that room and you think in your heart. Remember with your heart how it felt to be in that room when you were a child. And you'll kind of feel there. And if you allow them to be present in that room at the same time, don't allow sound to be part of this. This is not a memory. It's not a recollection of a time you were in your room where you're the third person looking and seeing yourself in the room in your mind. That's not what we're doing here. What we're doing is we're first personing this to where the sound in the room is the sound from the room in the past. And just with your eyes closed, let yourself go there. It's not going to work if there's too much noise, and so me talking at you, but do it later. And they're there. You're there. And when you open your eyes, you're back. I never left. I was here speaking to you lucidly, but I felt her. I did. And it fills you with love. It's weird. It's because there's a truth there. That connection's real. The fact that we are stuck in time doesn't mean the timeless doesn't exist. And if it does, that means that's where we are. That's just logic. And this is the holographic version that we're happen to be walking through. The other side of the mirror, but the fact is that we always have been and always will be. And if we recognize that and allow ourselves to remember that. I'm not teaching you anything. I'm trying to get you to remember. They're with us always. And not just in some kind of religious, like, oh, they're with us. No, like they're literally with us. There's something to be said for the fact that when she passed away, that I was there waiting for her. Nobody really dies. Nobody really leaves. And that's the end of sorrow. It works. You're already there with them. Now, can you feel them on your skin? No. Can you hear the voice of God in your head? No. Where do you hear the voice? Your voice from above. Where do you hear it? In your heart. Stop listening with your head. Where are you, Mom? I'm waiting for words. Not going to happen. Where are you? Grandma? My grandmother, the Italian one. carrus. Teresa Damone. She was. I'm a short guy, man. I'm 5'6" if I'm telling the truth, and 5'7" if I lie. My grandmother was like this tall. And she wasn't like my other grandma. My other grandma was this beautiful ray of light. My Italian grandma didn't know how to talk. She yelled. And she wasn't yelling because she was angry. She just didn't know how to be quiet. Italians are obnoxious and loud, and she was an Italian from Brooklyn. She was born in Italy, but she grew up an Italian from Brooklyn. So I'm only second generation in America. But that said, though, spunky lady. And I can almost feel her hair when I go there. She had really soft curls. I didn't get the curls. I didn't get the nose. I didn't get any of it, but she had these gorgeous soft curls. But yeah, so it's really an important thing to remember always remember. Not only is your soul always talking to you, but that's your voice. That's not your soul's voice. That implies there's a separation, that there's you and your soul. It's okay. We misunderstood. We didn't know. Nobody taught us. And so, we have to do the thing, which is to learn from each other. And there are people who've been able to walk through this experience. And some people have a gift of communication. And, we have an obligation. If anybody out there understands this information and feels like they have the ability to communicate it, you have an obligation to do so for all of our sakes. Because what happened during the descent is the one thing broke up into a bunch of pieces, and we all looked up into that mirror and thought we were separate. We're not separate. Who is talking right now? You're talking. This is your voice. So there it is. We covered a lot. All right, we covered the serpent and the flame. The idea that the wand is fire, and that the serpent is the wand. And what does that mean? That's the will of God. The serpent is the will of God from below. Why? Because it turns on the descent. The will of God looks like a vagina, goes through the descent, and appears as a serpent from below. Very simple. The serpent is not something to fear. Now that you understand the language, when you hear the devil talking to you, that's the voice of God from above in reverse. Just reverse what it's saying, and you have the truth. Apply the algorithm, and there it is. There is no God. The order in the vortex, obviously, the idea here is the order matters, and if you change the order, it breaks things. I can't use the numbers 1, 4, 6, 8 as my order, and you use 1, 2, 3, 4, and us exchange money. Someone's going to get in a lot of trouble that way. And, the I Ching talks about the idea of the algorithm, right? Like, if we apply it enough times, we get the same answer every time, no matter what. And that's the idea of this algorithm. Every two has a third. Apply it to anything in your life, and you'll see. If you're curious on how to use that technique, call, text. I don't charge. I'm happy to talk to you about it. As far as what this algorithm means, and to try to wake it up inside of you, so you can begin to use that concept. One way, just keep going back to the idea of black and white are opposites. That's true. But there is another opposite if you consider them as one thing, and that's color. And if you take black and white and color and as one thing, then it's gray. And it's the idea. And so, what's the opposite of gray? Have fun with that one tonight. And then we talked about the reconciliation, right? The idea that it's this spread, it's my spread. I developed it over, 40 years of reading cards and 20 years of being in possession of this knowledge. It came to me about 20 years ago. And have been developing the spread as a method of using it to communicate it to other people, and for other people to use the spread to see their own story. And when you meditate on it enough and you tell the story, you're going to see your life emerge in this spread. It does work. The reason I'm so confident that I can wake people up is I've done it over and over with people, and I've watched that light go on, and they're never the same. And it's a great thing to watch, and it's great to see where they are now compared to where they may have been had that not taken place. You know, and I'd like to think that I was able to contribute in that process. I have some stories I'm going to tell in the future about people that I've popped, and how it affected their lives. It's very special. You want to know if anyone's using magic against you? Okay, well, that's very simple. Cast a circle, and if your life changes, yes. Do you really fear that that's taking place? Because, you know, it comes down from the fact that magic is being used against us at all times. Always. I've talked many times about the fact that, you know, our soul is always speaking to us at every moment, right? And I've mentioned it many times before, but now we know this new truth, don't we? Every two has a three. So there's the soul talking and us listening. That's one thing. What's the third? And so how we interact with that third is going to determine whether or not the entities that we come in contact with are good or bad. Now, if you want the answer to that question, Lance, go back to a talk called This Will Wake You Up, period. It's in, if you look in my playlist on my channel, I talk about the experience. And there's a dark entity in that talk that I talk about interacting with and having a conversation with that entity, and there's really, really good stuff. Oh, very cool. That's great. So, all right, Lance. But what this comes down to is, or whatever your real name is, daiquiri. Cool. Are you coconut or strawberry? So, end of the day, if you're feeling like there's a dark influence in your life that's affecting you in ways that you don't realize or don't feel like you're participating in, what I meant before, and I wasn't joking, I kind of giggled, but I wasn't joking, cast a magic circle. What that means is that there a magic circle's its reason for existing is to protect you from evil. More specifically, to not allow into your environment, i.e. to reject anything that's going to damage your calm. Essentially, to quote Jane, anything that will affect the work, anything that'll stop you from knowing your peace and kind of being in your place of where you need to be. So if you're walking through your life doing your thing and you feel like there's dark entities that are entering your circumstance that are affecting you, there's work very easily to banish that. And when the way that you do that is recognize most of the time those voices are you listening with the wrong organ. You listen to your soul with your heart. If you hear it in your head, it's not you, it's not divine. The devil, actually, let me pull the card so you can see it. All right, this is going to answer your question. And thank you, Lon Milo DuQuette, because the devil card everywhere doesn't get this across, and Lon Milo DuQuette, this is his personal deck that he decided to publish to the world. He's the head of the OTO and the foremost living authority on the Thoth magical system and Kabbalah and Tarot. His devil card answers your question. Okay, so let me just find it. It's kind of purplish. There it is, like a purplish blue. Oh wait, let's. Okay, so there's a couple of those that got stuck in there. Who wants to guess why I'm going to say that the devil can only affect your mind? Because he's sitting on the sword. That's his only foundation. The devil can only affect your mind. He can't get into your heart. He can't affect your body. He can't affect your spirit. He can only fool you into thinking that the voice in your head is yours. The voice in your head is never yours. The voice in your head belongs to your brain, which is a product of your body, and that is the home of your ego. Your ego resides in the brain. Your soul resides in the divine mind. And the only way to access divine mind is with the heart. Okay? And so if you think that you are under the position, Pina, if you think that you're under the influence of a dark entity, the easy way to banish it is to allow the love of God into your mind instead. Now, what does that mean? That means your higher self. And, you know, once again, it's all here. This is the sword. And if you are doing it the wrong way, you're going to get bad information into your mind instead of divine heart. Do not let sword into mind. This is the way the devil communicates. This is the way that your higher self communicates. Lower self, higher self. You're supposed to take the divine mind into your heart. You're supposed to take the divine heart into your mind. If you are hearing bad in your mind, it's not your voice, right? The voice of God comes from below. The voice of, right? Your voice to going up sounds like it's coming from below, and think about why, right? It's the same idea, so. Okay. And as far as, you know, what it takes to go through that work, everybody has their own sort of techniques for banishing. There's a couple in particular that are actually very effective, specifically for casting a magical circle. The first one is the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, not the banishing ritual of the pentagram, the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. And depending upon where you start your stroke, if you start at the top, sides, whatever the case may be, and, you know, if you're curious on how to start, which corner, if you look at the top of that cross on the left there, the yellow one with the purple, you'll notice some symbols. On the top, there's like the eightfold wheel. That's the spirit. Like, all those signs represent different elements: heart, mind, body, spirit, and so forth. And now what you're able to do is the lesser banishing ritual. I encourage you to look it up. You may even be able to find a performance of it on YouTube. I've never tried to find it on YouTube. But the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, the LBRP. And what the LBRP does is it allows you to get into a state where every day you do this little ritual and it puts you in a state of protection. And then there's a little more complex workings, like the banishing ritual of the hexagram, which is not a lesser, and various others. And that's more hermetic, but it's effective. The language works, and even if you don't believe it, if you go through the steps, it will work. It's kind of like the idea of, I've never cooked. Follow this recipe. Okay, you made bread. All right, so just follow the rules, and you will get the result. And now, what I meant by that, if you cast a circle and your life changes, yes. If you cast the circle and suddenly the influences stop, that meant that meant there was an influence. But keep in mind, there always is an influence. And most of the time, that's the fact that you're listening to the ego, thinking it's you, and it's causing you to think things about yourself and feel things about yourself and change your behavior and your decisions and how you communicate and interact. And when you're more right with yourself, and you're coming from a place of your real desire and your real thoughts, which are, your thoughts come from your heart, your real heart, then nothing can go wrong. I've looked up things for protection, but I don't know. Nothing has been true or worked in his favor. Sure. Well, I mean, I have practical experience, and I could walk you through the LBRP, but there's books as well that are really good. You know what's a really great book for that? Modern Magick by Donald Michael Craig. I can't. That was a long time ago. That book was in my head. Wow, and I remembered it. The cover had a guy casting a lesser banishing ritual on the cover of the book. Let me see if I can find the image. Modern Magick, Donald. There we go. Let me see if the cover's the same. Yep. Okay, cool. Give me a sec, guys. Okay, I just have to share that screen, so hang on. Okay, let's see. get this book, and this will teach you everything you need to know about the LBRP. And I believe it also covers the BRH, the Banishing Ritual of the Hexagram. Hang on. There you go. All right. That's the book I'm talking about. That's a great book. Now, this is a book for people who are interested in actually practical magic. If you're interested in practical magic, it's a good way to start. It's a good primer. It's a good... That's like... This isn't kindergarten, but this is junior high. Okay? Okay, your sister wishing ill intentions towards you does not mean that she cast a dark entity. But, you know, that's a different story. Okay? But get this book. If you're interested in learning how to cast a circle, how to do the LBRP, which is very effective, you may even, again, if you do the searching, find somebody that's done like a performance of it on the internet with instructions or whatever the case. I don't know. But that said, that's my recommendation. Okay. Okay, let me remove that. Alrighty, so that said, let's just take a quick break and then throw some cards. What do we got? Oh, it's only 3:45. Wow, man. It's like early. Jeez. As well, and I wanted to put this out here, if there's any subjects that anyone is interested in me speaking about or finding somebody to speak about if I don't have the expertise, I will not share something I don't feel like I'm qualified to share. And if it's a portion of that subject that's beyond me, I'll tell you, and I'll give you a resource. So, like for instance, I'm not here to teach Kabbalah. That's not what I'm here to do. What I am here to do is to show you the connections between Kabbalah and Tarot. Or I'm not here to teach you I Ching. I'm here to teach you the combinations or the connections between the I Ching and the Tarot. And the fact that all these systems can be distilled into one truth. And that regardless of the method you use to find it, if you decide that you're going to seek, that puts you in an open enough position to for truth to start coming to you in the form of answers. A ghetto curse. I'm using that. I'm stealing it and I'm using it. And that's awesome. Well, how do you get rid of a ghetto curse? You need a diva to get work done for you, man. You need somebody else's sister to show up and be like, I done told you, and that'll get the job done. Take my word for it. If that person showed up at my house, I would do whatever she asked me to do. Like, whatever, please just don't hurt me. But, yeah, that's how you get rid of a ghetto curse, man. Let's apply the rule, just for the heck of it. My sister wishes bad intentions on me. What's the opposite of that? A stranger wants me to have joy. That's not the opposite. That's two sides of the same coin, right? This is literally what's happening. Your sister wants bad intentions and I want good intentions. But there is actually an opposite to that. And what is that opposite? If those two things are the same, what's the opposite? The only intentions that matter are yours, right? This one has good, this one has bad. No, there is no intent. The only intent is yours. You're the only one with the will. Who is talking right now? You are. You're hearing your own voice in your ears thinking it's not you. The entity that is attacking you is you. You are your sister. None of this ever happened. So, yeah. Give me a minute to heat up my coffee because I made a cup. I took one sip and it's already cold. And so I'm going to heat my coffee up. And then we'll throw some cards. So if anyone who wants to get on the list or whatever the case, just like give me a thumb up or a finger pointed down and a finger pointed up. Whatever. Just some way to know that you are interested. And then I'll get you on the list and we will go from there. So I'll be back in like 2-3 minutes and we'll start throwing some cards. Thank you for everybody who listened. Anybody who wants any additional help on anything, give me a call, please. Text, email, voicemail, WhatsApp, carrier pigeon, Facebook Messenger, and we'll, cool. and we'll go from there, okay? So, and yeah, like, so I do charge for readings, but I don't charge for advice, all right? So if you have any questions about, I love that. If you have any questions about that, let me know, and I'll be right back, okay? Alrighty. So let's do this. I'm going to look at my notes. Make sure I didn't miss anything that I wanted to speak about. I don't think I did. Yeah, just a reminder. This one reminder I did have here, and the cherry on the top. I want to remind you, we are all right now together in the higher world, which is the only world that exists and ever has. We never left. There was no descent. So we're all together in heaven right now. We're all together in the upper world right now. We're all together in, name a cloudy place where the guy with the beard lives, right? We're all there together right now, which is kind of cool. Who's hungry? I am known for making really good sauce. Like, I had several short Italian women tell me my sauce is better than theirs. Truth. So, who's with me? Okay, so let's see what we got here. 1, 2, 3. Great, okay. Yeah, right. No, you know what the whole idea of like doing like show notes is that I spent some time as a producer, like I've done a couple little things here and there as a producer on the back end. Um, Basically raising the money and then making sure that we got the right people to shoot it based on what needed to be shot and stuff like that. Um, whenever I would see a bad actor reading the script, it made me realize what I'm trying to do here. Uh-oh. Ladies and gentlemen, shit's about to go down. And we're both Italian, so this is tough. Now, anyway, we'll go there. One of these days we'll go there. I don't know. I'm in New York. If you're close enough, we can meet in between and do this for real live. I'm warning you, I'm pretty good, but listen, I don't know you, so you might be better. We'll see. I'll be straight. If I taste your sauce and it's better than mine, I'm gonna be honest, and I'll call myself defeated. It hasn't happened yet. It's on. But I lost my train of thought. Pardon me. Completely derailed. Yeah. Completely derailed. But so, the idea of taking notes is the idea that, New Hampshire, cool. I spent a lot of time in Vermont. I lived in Marshfield for a while. I love it up there by St. Johnsbury. The information is so important to me that I communicate it properly. So I have to speak to it many different ways: the simple way, the hard way, the complicated way, the math way, the art way, the music way, to tell the same tale, which is the story of your creation. And it's also simultaneously the story of the creation of the universe. And so that's important to me that I get that off, right? Thank you, Luann. I appreciate you coming. Every time I see your face and name, it makes me smile. So I don't want to come off inauthentic because I'm like reading, you know? And it's also important to me from a channeled perspective. If you want to learn about channeling, a couple of streams back, you know, I talk about what channeling actually is. And if you want to channel, this is where this came from. This is channeled. 100%. My walking through the abyss and scrying on the tree that got me there was channeled. All of it. The LBRP is a channeled experience. So go back and see what that is and you'll understand. And so, I've always been concerned that notes would affect the channel, right? Like it mental and then back. But yeah, what channeling is letting those two things talk simultaneously. The heart and mind talk at the same time. So you're just an open cup that's spitting words out, and you're observing. Like my job is to speak fast enough that the words don't get lost. I've likened it to the idea of a musician who writes music that, you know, you have fun, you write your music, but every once in a while, the whole song comes to you at once, and your job is to just write it down, right? Like it's just finished. This was that. It was a complete system at once. Boom. The three pieces, the four, the twists, all, you know, it was weird. The way it came together was really something. And then it was me kind of going back and going, okay, what was I thinking? You know? And that was 20 years ago. So the reason that I've been debating doing show notes was that I wanted to keep the channel, the source of the information rather than intellectual, because I've done a lot of reading and I can spit out some facts. And that's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is to avoid that and to look at the truth of what the facts are trying to say instead, you know? For the people who do want to know how the clock works, I'm your guy. For people who want to tell the time, we can go there as well, right? Yeah, that's something. You know what? I'm jealous of people who can do that. I have a good ear, and I play piano and I sing, and I have a good ear. But not to that. I've seen some people that really can just sit down and play a song complete, and I can get there. I know the notes. I can probably play anything that you'd recognize, but I'm not going to play it correctly. You know, it's my own little twist, I guess, but it'll be recognizable. It'll sound like Happy Birthday. But I play Für Elise in minors, because that's, I think, how he meant to write it. Don't forget, Beethoven was deaf. Think about that the next time you listen to Moonlight Sonata and consider he's never heard it. He's never heard Moonlight Sonata. I mean, wow. And yet he wrote it. Although you could argue that he knows the song and hears it in a way that we never will. He knows it in a way that we can't. Imagine hearing Moonlight Sonata from Beethoven's perspective. Right? Hearing without the ears. It's like walking into the darkness of the hermit. The hermit walks into the darkness, and he's forced to use an organ other than his eyes. Right? And that's why Beethoven could write the music that he could, because he wrote without the ears. Incidentally, Beethoven and I share a birthday. December 16th. That's it. I outed my birthday. December 16th. I'm pretty short, so medium shirts. And I don't wear boring socks. Okay. Incidentally, somebody's having a birthday soon that's a friend of the channel. I'm going to out them on the day, so if you don't want to be outed live on the internet, don't come to my channel on your birthday. All right, so first was Uncle, right? And then Lance / Daiquiri. And then Missy. Okay. The Asian who has won her freedom. Beethoven loves C minor. Does he really? Wow, C minor is a pretty chord. It's a good resolve, too. C minor, C. Well, that's not the resolve. That's the lift. The resolve. But you get the point. Really? You know what? I was due on Christmas. I came early. True story. And I was in the hospital for a little while, but it was fine. But I was in the hospital for a little while. And then when I was able to go home was after Christmas. And so my mother, apparently, I was told this after the fact. Obviously, I have no recollection. I was days old, and I was taken to my grandparents' house, the grandma I talked about, the ray of sunshine. And I was, okay. I was passed around the table. And my mother tells a story about when I got back to her, I was covered in food, like sauce, and I had stuff on my face, and like, because everyone, Italians are pretty like, oh, baby, and so there's like whatever they were eating is on you. And then I went back to the hospital, then I got to go home. I may fall asleep, so don't take it personally. I don't. I've done that before. Wow. No kidding. I actually had a friend of mine who used to call me to talk her to sleep. Not a joke. And I would. I used to recite Goodnight Moon. In the great green room, there was a telephone and a red balloon, and a picture of the cow jumping over the moon. Hello? Hello? Every time. So yeah, if you don't, and we can catch up, Missy, if you want to. I mean, but let's start. Let's begin with Uncle. Did you have a specific question, Uncle, or you just want to throw cards, or what do you want to? What do you feel like doing tonight? And I'll shuffle in the meantime. Isn't that something? You can tell too, like the grandmas and the moms and the grandpa, the ones that are like the cooks that insist that their deal is like to feed people. That's a nurturing soul, like there's something inside of them that's like that food is their thing. It brings us together. It nourishes. It's there's an idea of the bestowal and reception. And it's a very, very deep Kabbalistic idea of the fact that God bestows, and that's all he does, and we receive, and it's all we can do. Until we resolve and find in the middle, and then we realize who we are. No problem. And so, there's sort of a beauty to that. Because the person who is in a position of feeding people is in a position of bestowal, which is what God does, right? It's a holy act to feed another person. Because it's the act of bestowal, which is the act of creation. So, feeding somebody is special. That's right, yeah, she's in the beginning. She's less than a week into Sagittarius. And if we look at the wheel, let's take a look at the wheel. This is for Uncle's wife. And we're looking at end of November. Let's get rid of the vortex. Okay. November 27th. She's going to be close. Yeah, she's an 8 of wand. And we're talking about Mercury in Sagittarius as opposed to the moon or Saturn. All right. And so her deacon is the 8 of wand. Now, interestingly, too, that's the fact that you asked about career is sort of really, really neat because, and for the purposes of the example here, I'll pop up the writer version. Did I? Oh, it's up here. We've told the story before because we kind of went through this period together when we were going over the deacons for several days. It was my way of drilling the system of the deacons of tarot into people, and so we went through this period of time of showing the 6, 7, 8. The idea of the story of the battle, and the idea that there's several different phases of that with respect to how it generates courage through the process. And so here's the story and how that lies, right? Here's the 7. Why was 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. Okay, so let me find the 6. And then that just ties this whole story together. The 6 is the idea of glory. This person is wearing that wreath on their head because they're big victorious, right? And the fact is these other people in the back are looking up to that person, and that implies that they earned it. Okay? And that's important. These people are not respecting them because they're the king. They're respecting them because they did something that earned their respect. Now, this person, because of that, has the power to gather the troops, to direct them toward a specific goal. And so this is taking place, and that was executed. And so now this is taking place. This is the work being done. Hey, let's start up a company. We need a web designer, a programmer. We need an HR guy. We need somebody for the front desk. So now this is the work being done of the company being formed, of the product being built, of the sauce being cooked. And this person's alone, though, right? There's nobody else. There's all this adversity, and they have to overcome that adversity. And how do they do that? They do that through this idea of generating courage, right? You're going to enter the situation. There's a lot of stuff ahead of you, and you have to do what you need to get through it. And so your body, your soul, your will assists you by providing you with courage. What's courage? Doing even though you're afraid, right? You're afraid, but you do it anyway. That's courage. Courage is doing it afraid. But then you get into the battle, right? Now you're in the midst of the fight. You're doing good. You're holding the high ground. There's no injury. You're no as above, so below. So you're in a very good position here. There's no injury, and you're confident. So what happens with confidence? The fear disappears. And now, but here's the thing. The courage was born out of necessity. So now that the fear is gone, the courage is no longer needed and it disappears. But the energy that was raised by that courage stays and can be directed towards something else in the form of strength. Or it can be turned in a bad way towards something like, for instance, lust, which is the idea of the Thoth version of strength, which is an overinflated ego to the fact that you succeeded at something and you're kind of like, think you're higher than you are because of that. And it leads you to make decisions that are bad. And then we move to the 8. This has a couple of implications. The first thing here is that they're flying up in the air toward you. And secondly, they're coming down toward, right? Secondly, they're at their end. Like, imagine if these sticks were flying through the air. This is what it would look like right before they hit the ground, right? So this is the battle is over. The battle is ending. It's also very specifically designed that there are no adversaries, just the wands. What are the wands? Other people's will. Okay. So when we're looking at that, we have other people's wills. You're fighting just fine. Your will be done. And then you have the end, right? Like the battle's over. Now, what you notice, though, is, and this is the 8, this is what's coming next. What you'll notice is that when the battle's over, there's one person standing there. This is the only one that showed up and fought. Are they in one piece? Yeah. They do have a bandage on the arm and head, but it's not bad. They're actually okay, and they're going to heal just fine, right? That's all going to heal up. They won't even have a scar. That's going to be fine. Like there's really no big deal. But what they did notice is all these wands over here, the staffs that were stuck in the ground and not used by all the people who were too afraid and didn't show up when this one person did. So what this is referring to is this idea that some people have the ability to show up when others don't, because they have the ability to either work through their fear or work with it, and to generate that strength. And then when that transforms into something other than strength, it turns into power as opposed to greed or an overinflated ego. So that's really the idea of this progression, right? And so now this was the card that came up. Okay. Well, you can see that as protection, but it's more that fact that it's the idea here that the protector, and that he's in front of their wills. Like here, the wills were attacking. Here, the wills are flying at him and ending, and then where do they land? Behind him, and he's fine. Right? This person they're okay. And he's in front of them. They're behind that space, below, stuck in the ground, and they're no threat to him any longer. He can, in fact, grab one and use it if he wanted. And so it's a good position. And so, but in this case, though, the card that came up for his wife with respect to, at least initially, we're looking at her deacon. This is her deacon, right? And so the deacon doesn't refer to an event. Like, this isn't talking about this is going to happen type of thing. What this is referring to, yes, that's right, yeah. Oh, yeah, no, that makes sense, yeah. And that's not a bad way of looking at it. The idea that, because, what got built using that power? Protection, right? The power, or more importantly, the ability to weather the fight, right? Every two has a third. There's protection and the opposite of, well, not protection. Like there's winning and losing. But so, the idea here is that there's a lot of energy in the 8, and there's a lot of motion and movement in the 8. And it's also specifically the idea of will. But what this refers to as a deacon is the idea that you have to be aware that there are multiple sources of will. There's not just the one, and you have to you try to do your best to try to figure out which one is really yours. Because if you pick the wrong one, you're not extending your will, you're extending someone else's, and then you wind up in the 10, which I'm very familiar with the 10 because that's my card. And the 10, you'll see here on the bottom, is carrying everybody else's wands. And the warning of the 8 and the 9 is to not get into that, right? Because now this person showed up when nobody else did, right? And so now they have the obligation to do that because nobody else will. And so what the 10 is that next progression of them going, okay, if you won't, I'll carry him. And then it becomes a necessity because they rely upon that person, and they've been trained not to do for themselves. This person's a giver, the 10 of Wand. However, it's not sustainable, right? And the lesson there is you can put down 8 of them and only carry 2. Or say, hey, why don't you grab, 3, I'll grab 3, and then we only have to make 1 trip back, instead of carrying all the swords or the wands. And then in the case of the 8, it's the idea, notice that there's no people holding the wands, right? That's because you are. And so she's holding all these wands. And each one of those is a different will that she has to navigate. Well, yeah, carrying the burden alone is one way to look, but it's also, the idea here is that those wands are not ours. It's carrying other people's burdens, the 10. The 10 is carrying other people's burdens. This is fighting other people's battles. But it refers to the will in this case for her deacon. Her deacon is the 8 of Wands, so it's the idea of multiple wills coming at you at once, and make sure that what you're doing is for you. What that means is my mother really wanted me to be a doctor, so now I'm going to spend the next 40 years of my life in school to be miserable in my job because I just want to paint. Right? That's your mother's will. Your father's will is that you marry a millionaire, and live in some island and buy him season tickets to the Giant game, right? It's everyone's will is different, and you have to navigate that, because sometimes you need to give people what they want in order to get what you want. Sometimes you need to engage people in your will so that you can get what you want, but that is by giving them what they want first. Like, there's a lot of reasons that this could work, but it requires navigation. Otherwise, you're going to wind up having all this stuff thrown at you from everybody else, and it can get overwhelming. And so what this is implying with respect to her deacon is that this is kind of like a quality that's instilled in her, right? And so she'll have the quality of being able to navigate these circumstances, multiple wills. She's probably pretty effective and efficient as an individual. Like, I would imagine she would be able to do okay in a hectic situation, or at least in the moment, and like scream into a pillow later, right? But keep her cool during the situation. And that's what's kind of gotten her to the point that she's the one that'll step up, right? Now, let's throw some cards. So let's look at, for instance, where is she now? We'll do a quick 3 card. And Uncle, what I'd like to do is to get together with you and do like a real spread specific to her, or anything that you want to do specific to her. But we'll do a quick 3 card here on the channel here to look at where is she coming from with respect to that. What is her current situation as far as like her soul talk situation? What is her mind trying to, the divine mind, trying to tell her? And then the third card I'll put out will be the action. Like, what should she do next to forward the story correctly, right? So the first card that we're going to use is not really past, but the influences that brought her to where she is. So it could be past, but there is no past. It's not about that. It's more about what were the energies that manifested the beginning of the new story of her career. 7 of Disc. Not a bad card. Now, this also implies that there's others. The career is not alone, okay? And again, just for illustrative purposes, this is a person that is unsatisfied where they are because they're being underutilized and feel like they can do more. Okay? It's the idea that this person is not lazy, they're bored. And each one of those pentacles is another opportunity to manifest something else, but that's not being done because they're you're about to enter the fight, and so your body gives you courage. Well, sometimes instead of entering the fight and you needing courage, you need motivation, and you need to be able to work through a lack of motivation. And so what this is the idea of there being initially this lack of motivation due to being underutilized or feeling like you should be working above yourself. The idea here is that with respect to the combination of the multiple wands and the 8 of her deacon, this circumstance is not alone, is the first thing. The second thing that we want to look at here is this idea. This is earth and air. Physical, mental. Also consider the shape. This is a cone pointing in, so this is listening. This is a pointing out, so this is talking. Speaking, listening, right? Speaking and listening. So she was hearing earth and speaking air. So she was hearing, you can make a lot of money or whatever the case may be, but then was speaking and asking and then didn't receive, right? And it put her in this position of feeling underutilized, voice is not heard, and so she, is not progressing, type of thing. And so let's look at the next circumstance, which is going to be, where is she now with respect to soul talk, right? Like, what is her inner voice or higher self trying to say to her about this circumstance that she needs to hear in order to make a correct decision, or in order to feel satisfied that she's on the right path? Because here's the point, like, wherever you happen to be right now, is you at the beginning of time conspired to put things into place so that this moment would happen 14 billion years later. No, I'm not kidding. And so, there's, wherever she is, she belongs. But let's just see, it doesn't hurt if we have the perspective to provide insight onto how to navigate. Because the fact is, we do get to rewrite the story. Oh, we told the story in the beginning. The story's over. We're in the end. We already lived it. We know how it ends. But we do get to rewrite the story at the same time. Isn't that beautiful? And so let's do that. Let's figure out, what is her soul telling her that she needs to be doing right now, or she needs to know, that'll help forward the story correctly for her. The Knight of Cup. Okay, so now all of the knights, which are the king in the Thoth system, that's why this is saying knight, but it's the king, are fire. Okay, all of the kings are fire. All the knights in the Thoth system are fire. And now, because he's a cup, that means water. And so it's the same thing as before, right, with this idea. But what we're looking at here is the listening is the will, and the bestowing is emotion. Okay? So what the Knight of Cup is, what her soul is trying to tell her, is to listen to your divine will. You know what you want to do. Like, there's a drive inside of you right now. You don't need to rethink that drive. It's correct. And how do we know that? Because we know that because the will doesn't swap in the vortex. It's pinned. The divine feminine reigns upon the profane masculine. So the wills are aligned if you are open to that. Be open to your divine feminine, and your will be done. Because it's a correct will. So what this is saying is that this is the will communicating emotion. So talking about feelings, talking about emotion, talking about the act of receptivity, talking about the value of being receptive. wanting a strong will to receive. And now, here's the action. Well, actually, let me pause. Any questions, Uncle Noob? Any insight or anything you want me to talk about? What as far as what I already threw? Otherwise, I'll just continue with the third card, the action card. Okay. I think one more. Is it really? All right, cool. I kind of probably could have told you that because, there's certain people that come into the channel that I feel like I have a connection with. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to single people out that I don't like. I'm kidding. But really though, Uncle, I don't know. I just have a connection with him, and so I kind of knew when he asked a question that we were going to flow, But let's see, because that matters, man. If you're not an open cup, and I'm not the right wand, it ain't gonna work, right? I come with the wand only, and you come with your cup only. And if you do, then we're gonna find the truth, not answers. Okay. All right. I don't read upside down, so I'm gonna turn that. But Prince of Cup. The prince is the knight. The knight is the king. So just to be clear, that's why this is the airy part and this is the fiery part, right? And interestingly, they're both cups. So we're still in emotion now, but now we're talking about, instead of the will, we're talking about communicating, right? And it's in that same vein, though. And now, interestingly, the date of the Prince of Cup, which is the final action card, is coming up in a month, less. It's before her birthday, though. About 2 weeks before or a month before her birthday. Month and change. But it's coming up in, 2 weeks. And what this is going to be is that she's going to be in a position of communicating her desire to somebody. And because, again, there's others involved here. Wow. Yeah, right. Volatile and prone to change on a whim. And, she probably has a right to feel that way, frankly, because of what we talked about. When you have a fire burning in you and nobody wants to hear it, that's tough. And that's the work you have to get through in order to find yourself. In order to find that place, that the same place that draws courage can draw emotional courage. And what that is the ability to motivate yourself, knowing that the work is what matters, not what people think about it. Because what happens is, when you are authentic in your work, those other people who were talking shit disappear, and you will attract the people who are into the work that you're doing. So it changes your audience. But that's okay, because the new audience is more authentic to what you actually want and do, right? And so if you're a chef, you shouldn't be waiting tables. If you're social, you shouldn't be waiting tables. You should be a bartender. If you have the tenacity and you've got good motivation and you've got good endurance, be the waiter, right? Know your role and be that, because, trying to be something else is not going to work out. So I'm going to pause and ask, is that insightful? I mean, that's the 3-card version. And, we can certainly break that out even further to look at the specifics of, the circumstances there. But that's the gist. And who do we have? We had, I know Missy was on there, if she's still awake. The night Max wore his wolf suit and made mischief of one kind and another. And his mother called him Wild Thing, and he said, "I'll eat you up." And she sent him to bed without eating anything at all. Hello? So, okay. All right, great. And all I ask ever, if I do a reading for anybody, if you find any insight, just please like the video, consider a comment. It makes a big difference. I am growing very slowly. I made a change to my channel that affected me in a negative way with respect to growth. I was doing free readings, and that's all it was, right? And so obviously I was getting picked up, and I grew from 20 to 200 in just a short period of time, and now I'm stuck at 260 and not growing. But that's okay, because it's about the authenticity of the information, and I don't care. It's not about that. If I actually pop one brain doing this, it was worth the past 3 months of 4 hours of sleep. And I mean that. Because there's an exponential growth with every person that wakes up. We all get better. We all grow together, and it's exponential. 1 + 1 is 2, but 2 + 1 is infinity. So really, we need to wake each other up, and that's what it's all about. And a comment matters. Hey man, your readings suck. You're ugly. I hate your face. Will get viewed by the algorithm and will put people in front of my channel, and it matters. It does. So I appreciate that. And obviously, anyone wants to buy me a cup of coffee or a reading or anything else for as little as $1, you know, you can see like my 1-card readings can go for a half hour if I wanted to. That's why the live stream readings are a shortened version of everything. Even with Uncle there, we would have 21. Really cool. That's a great number. I mean, that's the number of the majors. That's the 3 7s. Right? Plus the Fool, which is nothing, so it doesn't have it's not counted. There are 22 letters, but there's 21 cards plus the Fool. Right? It's 2 through 10 plus the Ace. It's not 1 through 10. It's the 3 courts plus the Princess, not the 4 courts. It's the 3 elements together that make Earth, not the 4 elements. And so 777 equals 21. It's great. Well, thank you for saying that. That means a lot. You know, when God grants upon you the gift of gab, you better have a good voice. Could you imagine if, like, you know, all you want to do is communicate and it's like, that would not gel. You know what I mean? That would not work. But all kidding aside, God grants us all, and you did it. At the beginning of time, you chose what your gift would be. A gift. Mine is really good sauce. And the ability to talk. But, you know, and I'm not a bad partner to have at Trivial Pursuit. But, you know, everyone has their superpower, right? And mine is talking. And so I appreciate that. It matters to me because it's, you know, it's a big part of who I am. So the next person on the list, let's see, when we first started putting up thumbs and things. Okay. All right, Daiquiri, if you're still in the house, let me know. If not, then we're going to move to Missy. Missy, if you're still awake, you're next. If Daiquiri's not here. / Lance. And the last thing I'm going to do before I end the stream tonight is I'm going to ask someone, so that it's truly random. I'm going to ask, you wish you believed that. Believed what? I'm going to ask somebody to pick a random book. All right, I'll name out the names. Someone, you know, give me the list. We'll pick a page number. Someone type a page number. I'll open it up, read that line, and show you how this deck will explain what we're reading. Okay? It can unlock every piece of observable phenomena in the human experience. And it sounds bold until you use it and realize it works. And the tarot does that as well, but the tarot is a little more, what is that? You know, so this is like, bam, it's just obvious. When you look at, especially the ideas related to the elements, right? That's the pentacle of lament, right? Which is the idea of blocking, like not being able to receive and being upset about that, wanting to give and not being allowed to. Don't believe in choice. Good. Every two has a third. What's a choice? It's one or the other. And all that does is limit your options. Instead, make decisions. Do you want A or B? Neither. I want something else entirely. I want nothing. You know, you have the option. And there's a difference between options and decisions. Options are provided to you to choose from. Decisions come from within based on will. And that's what we're here to do. So yeah, choice is a lie anyway. If you're choosing, that's not your will acting. Now, if you decide on one of the things that was a choice, that's fine, but it was still a decision. Okay? So yeah, that said, I don't see any daiquiri. And I think we might have lost Missy. Should we talk about her since she's not here? She might be in the room right now, but sleeping, and then she's going to come back on this stream to watch what she missed. Let's talk about her while she's not here. I don't know. Let's go back and look at... I don't know. I have to say she looks kind of pretty, so I can't say anything about that. Francasio is a great name, though. Like, really. I don't know. I have a thing for Italian names. Like, I got the most boring Italian names. Pagano and Damone. And that's not even my name. My grandfather, who I never met, my father's father, died when my father was a young child. So I never met my grandfather. My dad's dad. And my grandmother remarried. And we took his name. And so my grandfather that I grew up with was not blood, but he was my grandfather. I mean, he loved me. He showed me nothing but love. So at the end of the day, yeah. But that said, Italian names are cool, and I got the boring ones. Pagano. Pagano is kind of cool, I guess, because it means pagan, right? And what are we talking about here, right? And then Damone is kind of cool because that's not the actual name. It was changed. But it's a good conversation starter because my grandmother was I think cousins with Victimone, the singer. He was married to Diane Carroll. That's really something special, you know, for a white Italian that was a celebrity to marry a black woman in the 70s, like, that was pretty progressive, right? And unfortunately, they had a tumultuous marriage, but that's just because he was an asshole and they had issues. But at the end of the day, it was like very progressive for him to say, I don't care what people think, I love this woman and I'm going to marry her, right? And, you know, and Diane Carroll was a very special lady. But yeah, but I got the boring Italian names. I mean, you know what's funny though? Nothing beats Greek. I used to work with a woman. We were close friends. Her name was Joanna. And the last name, so God bless her, really, Pastapoliccio. Now try to spell that shit. Like, imagine signing a check. I mean, or like when you were a kid, you know, like, oh, Timmy, so what's your name? Smith, S-M-I-T-H. Oh, great. And Mary, what's your name? Jones, J-O-N-E-S. Oh, that's great. And what about Joanna? Pastapoliccio. P, something, Policcio. I mean, really, like, or, Constantopoulos. Man, Greek names are a blast. They're really something. If you want to, you know, like, if you want to warm up before singing, try to recite a church directory of a Greek Orthodox church. Well, half of it's easy because half of it's karrus, but then the other half is going to be like 17 vowel names that end in all of them end in s's. It's just hysterical. But yeah, that's funny stuff. All right, well, you know, we're kind of winding down here, so here's the deal. On the bottom here, please don't pick that one because it's on the bottom and it's huge. But this is Helena Blavatsky, HPV. Isis Unveiled, both volumes. Then we have Secret Teaching of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, an amazing book. Look him up too and listen to his words. He's an amazing orator, and he's an expert communicator. Lemegeton, that would be interesting because this is the book of goetic magic, like actually calling entities, right? Evoking and invoking, invocation and evocation. The 3 magical books of Solomon, which goes along with the Goetia. The Picatrix is an older version of that type of knowledge, and then the Emerald Tablet, Kabbalion, Morals and Dogma, which is the Freemasonic body of knowledge by Albert Pike, Book 4 by Crowley, the Corpus Hermeticum, Sefer Yetzirah, and then the Book of Thoth. So that's what we're talking about. Isis. Oh, she said it. Fine. You buttered me up all night by telling me that you like my voice, so I can't say no. Let's see here. So I'm going to pick Isis Unveiled because somebody else picked Isis Unveiled. Again, I lost everything in an act of maliciousness in the past, and have had to completely collect my my collection. Right. That includes I lost a first print book 4. It was destroyed, willingly, maliciously to hurt me. Unbelievable, like a first print book 4. This is my new book 4. Some new shiny like look at this. This is in book 4. It had a paper cover. It was like a weird kind of cardboard, and I just everything about it. Like I miss. Ooh, there's good stuff in there. Any musicians in the house? Anyway, this is a great book, and this is the one that started it all for me. I was 6 years old, and I found a copy in my father's closet when he was at work, and I was digging through my dad's stuff when he didn't know. I came across all kinds of goodies, but one of them I came across was book 4. And it looks so interesting. I cracked it open, and there's something like this, right? Like there was these weird symbols, and I'm like, oh, what's that? What is that? Like, what is this stuff? What is that? Right? And so I took it. And he never noticed it missing. He never said a word to me. There was some stuff highlighted in the book even, which was interesting. And it talks about the idea of achieving conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel through the act of spiritual yoga. It's a different technique, and nothing against Aleister Crowley. I mean, you want to talk about standing on the shoulders of giants, but he was a humorist and an asshole. So when he was writing, he was either making fun of you to your face without you realizing it, or he was making fun of the people who didn't get the joke, and you were in on the joke. But you got to really read between the lines with Crowley, because he's so genius that he can at the same time insult you while you're in on the joke while telling you the truth. And so, if you approach Crowley's writing, always look at it from the perspective of, is he lying to me right now? Is he joking, or is he insulting me? So now, let me find the First Solomon's Tarot deck and book. Really? First Solomon's Tarot? I'm not familiar with it. 525. I have to look that up. 536 pages. So pick a page, and it's 530. It's only 500 because they're big pages. All right? It would be like it's normal size print. So this would be a much bigger book if it weren't huge, right? It would probably be 2 volumes. It actually is 2 volumes, and so on. So someone pick a Shoulders from Giants is a book I will probably never finish. Right? Someone pick a page between 1 and 538. I said. Was that what I said? 536. 21. Okay, so 21. Where have I heard heard that number before. I'm going to count 21 sentences, and then I'm going to start reading from the first sentence after that point. Okay, so I'm just going to count from the top down, 21, on the 21st page. Let's not knock my laptop off the desk. Okay. 1, 2. Where's my wand? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay, so this is the beginning of the next sentence. Neither pearls nor cut diamonds are to be found lying loose on the ground, and these persons act as unwisely as would a professional diver who would reject an oyster on account of its filthy and slimy appearance, when by opening it he might find a precious pearl inside of a shell. I don't know how I'm going to prop this up. Maybe that'll work. Okay, good, that worked. Okay, it didn't work. Where's that dot? Okay. Yeah, 21's a great number. Every 2 has a third, which is 1. 21 is a 3, which is a 1. And so it's really, it's a great number. It's also half of the answer to life, the universe, and everything. There's the upper and the lower world. What is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? 42. Twice 21. 6 sevens. Did Douglas Adams know something? If not, he was divinely inspired by truth. So, okay. Neither pearls nor cut diamonds are to be found lying loose on the ground. Obviously, the lower world is the ground. And these persons act as unwisely as would a professional diver who would reject an oyster on account of its filthy and slimy appearance, when by opening it, he might find a precious pearl inside of the shell. Right? And now what this refers to is the idea that we look at the abyss and we see the dark and the scary. But if we just realize we just got to walk through it, we're going to realize, oh, I'm alone. There is no God on the other side of the abyss. It was always me. And that thing I thought was him was just me being reflected. The reason God thinks that it's talking down to us is he's looking down at the same mirror, seeing an opposite version, thinking that that's not him. And both of those are you right now. Right now, that's you. And so, when by opening it, he might find the precious pearl inside, right? And so, instead of being afraid of the abyss, walk through it and you're going to find truth. Let's do one more. I always find I enjoy very much and the Emerald Tablet. I enjoy very much some of the Goetic stuff. But really, it's whatever. The mirror. Or is it a window? Or is it a mirror? My dad did that. My father would eat so many oysters and clams. I can't do it. That's one of the Italian things I don't do. I don't eat like raw fish and raw like oysters, clams, or steamed. I don't know. There's something talking about, slimy exterior. It also has a slimy interior. And I don't know. He just sucks them down like they're candy. And I eat squid. I like me some galamab. But that said, though, I can't do like shellfish. Gross. No, thank you. Solomon. Oh, what? You want me to do something from the Books of Solomon? Well, yes, my dear. Do you really want to meddle with the Goetia? It might wind up meddling with you. Okay, so let's see. See, now I have this big book in front of me and I have to do something with it because somebody insisted that I get the Isis Unveiled. Which, by the way, H.P. Blavatsky is a gift to the world. What this woman wrote, don't be afraid of anything you read on the internet about satanic bullshit or whatever the case, because she understood the divine feminine. Okay? And so that's an important thing. December 16th. $1975. My number? Let's find out. We cancel out nines, right? Remember the tip I told everybody about canceling out nines? And so let's say you want to do my birthday. Let's do the calculator here just to illustrate the numbers. We're going to do 12, 16, 19, 75, right? Cancel all the nines. That 9 is gone. That's a 0. That 7 and a 2 is gone, right? And so it's very easy to kind of cancel the 9s. 6 and 5 is 11, which is a 9 plus 2, right? And there's a lot of ways that you can cancel these 9s. Like, for instance, that's 7, and these 2 1s can be canceled as well, right? And so by getting rid of all the 9s and turning them into 0s, we can rewrite this equation. So let's first of all get rid of that 9 right away and just make 7, 5. All right. That 5 and 2 can go away. The 7 and the 2 can go away. That leaves us with 6 and 1, which is 7. So I would say 7. Just from that, we'll say 7. So 12, 16, 19, 75 would be 1 plus 2 is 3, 4, 10, 11, 27, 33, 6. Did I do that right? 27? Right, one more time. 1 plus 2 is 3, 4, 10, 11, 27. Oh, 32. Which is a 5. Is that where I'm at? I can't think straight. It's 4:50 in the morning and I don't sleep. Why is people asking me to do math? Actually, math's my thing. But, yeah. So canceling out 9s is the technique I talked about yesterday with the, and again, we have the Vedics to thank for that. The idea of 0 being aligned with 9, and so 9 equals 0. And that gives you the ability to cancel the 9s when you're doing numerology. So for instance, again, we would take that 9 out. If we were doing this, let's do it on paper because it's easier to manipulate. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's a lot easier to do on paper, right? And so let's use the Deacon chart. And you can just cross out. So 12, 16, 19, 75. Okay? The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to cancel the 9. I'm going to cancel the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay? Now I'm left with 6 and 7. Right? And so there's no 9s there. Right? I've canceled all my 9s. Wait, that's a 1. Right? That is a 1. So that's 5. Yeah. And now if I do it the long way, let's do it the long way. 1, 2, 1, 6, 1, 9, 7, 5.